"Shut up, you unemployed loser. Don't you dare talk back to me." Yelling with a face flushed red is my husband, Cody. As he said, "I'm not working. That's because I've been taking care of my disabled mother-in-law, Brittany." At Cody's request. "Who do you think made me quit my job?" "It was 10 years ago that I left my job," at Cody's request. "Since then, I've been helping her." Yet Cody's words cut deeply. Fortunately, Brittany and I have a good relationship, no harassment or mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts. However, I'm not a professional caregiver, so taking care of her has been incredibly challenging. But I've continued to support her because she treats me like her own daughter, and because Cody begged me to. Now, Cody seems to have forgotten all of that, and he bangs the table with a triumphant look on his face. On the table lies a filled-out divorce application, and I can feel the heat of anger rising in my face. "I'm dating the CEO's daughter. I got her pregnant, so I'm going to marry her." Underneath the divorce papers is a photograph. It shows a beautiful woman with a confident, almost defiant smile. As I look at the woman he introduces as the CEO's daughter, I try hard to stifle a laugh. I know her all too well. This woman is. My name is Anastasia, and I'm 35 years old. My husband Cody is 2 years older than me. We met 10 years ago when I was introduced to him by the manager of the bakery where I worked. He worked at the head office and took a liking to me during a visit. After we were introduced and got to know each other, our marriage was soon arranged. Cody's mother, Brittany, had suffered a partial disability in her lower body from a car accident in the past. But when I went to their family meeting, she went out of her way to greet me at the door in a wheelchair. I still remember how humbled I felt. Perhaps seeing my humility, she gave me a warm smile and happily approved of our marriage. Out of consideration for her condition, we decided to settle down near his family home. But shortly after we got married, before we even decided on a new home, an accident occurred. Brittany fell from her wheelchair. Luckily, it wasn't life-threatening, but her mobility worsened significantly. Before the accident, although she couldn't move without her wheelchair, she could still use a cane or handrails to get from the wheelchair to a chair or bed on her own. But this time, she injured her back badly and lost even that ability. The increased disability meant that she relied even more on a caregiver, but that didn't solve everything. Caregivers are not free, nor are they available at all times. As a result, there were times when she was left alone, especially at night when visibility became poor. Brittany, resigned to the situation, laughed it off, saying she'd have to rely on a nursing facility. But Cody wasn't having any of it. He begged me, saying he'd work harder and earn more so that I could take care of her. At the time, both my parents had already passed away. Not that it was the only reason, but knowing I wouldn't have to face caregiving issues with my own parents, I decided to take on her care. Of course, I'm an amateur, and there's much I couldn't do, no matter how hard I tried. I knew I could never match the professionals. But even so, I wanted to be there for the kind-hearted Brittany, so I agreed to his proposal. Living a hard life right after marriage, caring for my mother-in-law in the same house, was surprisingly simpler than I had imagined, even when compared to other newlywed couples. Brittany had long been accustomed to her disability and was good at communicating her needs to both Cody and her caregivers. Thanks to that, she carefully explained to me what she needed and how I could help her. Moreover, Brittany never took her care for granted and always expressed gratitude. While there were no issues between Brittany and me, my relationship with Cody gradually started to cool. We had planned for both of us to work, but now he was the sole breadwinner, responsible for supporting his disabled mother and his wife, who had quit her job to provide care. This pressure must have taken its toll on him. Cody's frustration grew, and eventually, he started directing his anger toward us. When I scolded him for coming home late at night without any notice, he would snap, saying I had no right to complain about work-related matters since I didn't have a job. When he didn't come home for dinner, and I called him, he casually told me he was on a business trip. If I protested, he'd brush me off with, "You don't get to complain when you're being supported." Every time he dismissed me as unemployed, I'd shoot back, "Who do you think asked me to quit in the first place?" When I said that, he'd have nothing to say in return. He started avoiding coming home altogether, likely to avoid facing me. He'd deliberately come home when I was out shopping, quickly shower, eat everything I'd prepared in the fridge, and leave in a hurry. He'd throw all his laundry into the basket before leaving, so I would wash his clothes. But one day, I noticed Cody's wardrobe had changed. He started wearing branded dress shirts, and our room filled with stylish ties and tie-pins. The suits I was familiar with were shoved into the back of the closet, replaced with custom-made, obviously higher-end suits that he must have recently bought. His income hadn't increased, and he wasn't making reckless purchases on his credit cards. However, there was no doubt these were inappropriate purchases. And when I checked our savings, I saw clear signs that the money had been used. "Hey, why did you use our savings without telling me? How much did that suit cost?" Spending thousands of dollars out of the blue. "What are you thinking?" Before I could finish asking him to be more considerate, Cody cut me off, shouting, "Shut up, shut up." That's how he is lately. He won't listen to a word I say, and just forcefully shuts me down. I've had enough. Every day, it's be patient this and save money that. I feel suffocated at home. Who do you think is earning the money around here? There it is again. You're the one who asked me to quit my job and take care of your mother. He always got angry in the same way, so I found myself giving the same response. If I had known our finances would get this tight, I would have suggested having Brittany use adult day services so I could work part-time, at least. But when I brought it up, Cody yelled, "Are you saying I don't earn enough to support my wife and mother?" His pride was wounded. In response, I cut costs as much as possible, planning our meals 2 weeks at a time, shopping carefully, freezing leftovers and sale items to build up a stockpile. But Cody would come home suddenly and eat everything, causing our grocery bills to increase. If he'd just come home regularly, I wouldn't need to make unexpected shopping trips. Cody didn't want me to go out to work, nor would he cooperate with our efforts to save money. Yet he always acted like the victim. "Anastasia, may I speak with you for a moment?" Whenever our arguments started heating up, Brittany would gently call out to us in her calm voice. Her voice would bring us back to our senses, cooling things down. When I'd leave Cody and go to her, it was usually for something small. It was clear that Brittany was being considerate of us. "I'm so sorry. I hate that I can't do these simple things myself," she would say with an apologetic smile, asking me to change her socks because she was cold. That smile always made me feel like crying. The only thing that made me glad I had married Cody was being able to call her my mother. One day, I noticed a stain on Cody's shirt as I was about to put it in the washing machine after he had come home late and taken a shower. Thinking it might need some stain remover, I spread the shirt out, and there it was, a faint pink lipstick mark. His commute wasn't that crowded, and today there wasn't any smell of alcohol, so it wasn't from some nightclub he had gone to for business. After a few moments of thought, I hid the shirt and quietly threw a fresh one into the washing machine, hoping he wouldn't notice. While Cody was in the shower, I quickly checked his wallet. As expected, careless Cody had stuffed receipts in there. Among them, I found receipts from a hotel and from a women's luxury brand. With a sigh, I pulled them out. It was clear he was having an affair. I had a feeling this was coming. Even though we had been fighting a lot, Cody's recent behavior was undeniably strange. The anger I had been suppressing started to surge, swelling like a violent wave. I bit my lip so hard it made a creaking sound. Brittany. I quickly looked up to see Brittany, who had wheeled herself in to check on me. Seeing the receipts clenched in my hand, and my vacant expression, she seemed to understand the situation. "Cody's still in the shower, right?" she asked, glancing toward the bathroom. I nodded. "Anastasia, gather all the evidence. Tomorrow, go to a detective agency I know." "What?" But before I could finish, she quietly put her arm around my shoulders. "It's okay. I'm on your side." The next day, right after Cody left, I went to the detective agency Brittany had introduced to me. I handed over the shirt and receipts, and waited for the investigation's results. Since I knew nothing about the woman, I was prepared for it to take some time, but Brittany's recommended detective turned out to be very skilled. Within about a week, they reported back with a pile of photographic evidence. The woman's name was Nicole, 34 years old, and she worked for one of Cody's company's business partners. The pictures taken from afar showed her wearing the same shade of lipstick that had stained Cody's shirt. That very day, I decided to confront Cody. When he came home from work, I showed him the shirt with the lipstick stain and the photos. Care to explain? Since I already knew everything from the investigation, there wasn't really anything to explain, but I was curious to see what kind of excuse Cody would come up with. A man who didn't help with the housework, left his mother's care entirely to his wife, and enjoyed himself. What kind of excuse would he make? He glanced briefly at the shirt, looked at the photos, and then sneered. I had expected him to be a bit flustered, but he didn't show even a hint of it. "So you figured it out." He tossed the photos aside and stretched lazily. Both Brittany and I were stunned by his unexpected reaction. "I know everything," I blurted out, but Cody just laughed at me condescendingly. "Don't lie. You don't know anything about Nicole. She's an amazing woman, nothing like a gloomy woman like you." "Cody, how dare you speak to Anastasia like that?" Brittany, gripping the armrest of her wheelchair, shouted angrily, but Cody didn't seem to care. "Mother, you don't need to side with Anastasia. I'm going to marry Nicole, so let's hurry up and kick her out." "What?" A strange sound escaped my mouth in shock. I stared at Cody in disbelief as he casually picked at his ear, noticing my reaction, and smirking. "Nicole's pregnant with my child." It felt like I had been struck by lightning. There were no children between Cody and me. We had talked about someday, but as the fights increased, we stopped being intimate. Still, it wasn't that I didn't want children. I thought he felt the same, but I never imagined he would go and have a child with someone else. "Relax, Mother. Nicole's the daughter of some company president, a rich girl. This marriage is a golden opportunity. Now I'll have plenty of money to pay for your care." "Cody, how shameless. I can't believe this." Brittany's shoulders shook as she watched Cody laughing hysterically, but her reaction made him stop laughing abruptly. He exaggerated a sigh. I guess you've spent too much time with Anastasia, Mother. You've gotten stupid too." He sneered, looking us up and down with contempt before spitting out his next words. "All right, then, I'll divorce Anastasia and cut ties with you too, Mother. You useless women are just dragging down my life." He made a dismissive gesture as if to shoo us away. And that was the last straw. I slammed my fist on the table, in fury. How dare you say that? This is too much. It was cruel enough to say such things to his own mother, and to me, who had cared for her for the past 10 years. Even though Brittany and I had a close relationship, caring for someone who was paralyzed from the waist down was no easy task. But because she was Cody's mother, I had given up the prime years of my life, from age 25 to 35, to care for her. But my anger didn't faze Cody in the slightest. "Huff, taking care of your parents is a wife's job," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Cody had no intention of appreciating all that I had done up until now. Brittany squeezed my hand, as if to shield me from the shock I felt. "Anastasia has taken care of me so devotedly, even though we're not related by blood. And yet you betray her like this. Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" Brittany's voice shook with anger, but Cody looked at her as though she were something revolting. "Shut up, I'm the one who's been earning the money to pay for your care. Once I marry Nicole, I'll leave you behind, useless old hag. Enough already," I shouted back, my voice filled with fury at Cody's words, which were as though he had become a completely different person. I squeezed Brittany's trembling hand, glaring at Cody. "We'll get a divorce, but I'm taking her with me," I declared firmly, and Brittany looked at me with surprise and confusion. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was right for me, who wasn't even her real daughter, to say something like that. But there was no way I could leave Brittany behind with this man. "Brittany, if you're okay with it, let's live together." She had given me a mother's warmth after I lost my own parents at a young age. There was no way I could stand by and leave her with someone so heartless. "Anastasia, are you sure?" Brittany asked, her voice quivering with tears. "Of course," I smiled reassuringly. "If you'll take her, that's great. Hurry up and get out. This house is mine." Cody jeered, mocking us. Ignoring him, Brittany and I immediately started packing our things without a second thought. Cody, showing no signs of remorse, chugged a beer from the fridge, while the laughter from the TV he had turned on filled the background. We only packed the essentials and left the house without hesitation. Despite the fact that his own mother was leaving, Cody didn't even bother to see us off. Afterward, the divorce was finalized smoothly. It seemed Cody really intended to marry the company president's daughter, as he quickly paid the compensation for his infidelity. Given that Cody had no significant savings, the money must have come from the woman. The family home was something Cody had inherited when his father passed away, so we had no choice but to leave. But with the compensation, we were able to secure a decent amount of money. I immediately rented an accessible apartment and started a new life with Brittany. Since we had only taken our valuables when we left, we returned to the house a few times during the weekdays to pack the rest of our belongings. Fortunately, we never ran into Cody. Still, it seemed he wasn't happy about me going back to the house while he was out, as he started leaving our things thrown haphazardly in boxes on the doorstep. About a month after we moved, as I was preparing to eat dinner, I got a call from Cody. If I recalled correctly, today was supposed to be Cody and his mistress' wedding day. I remembered how furious Brittany and I were when Cody had the audacity to ask her to attend the wedding shortly after we moved out. Of course, Brittany immediately declined the invitation and blocked his number. I wanted to do the same, but the thought of cutting off contact completely scared me. Who knew what Cody might do if he couldn't reach me? As I ignored the call, the phone rang again almost immediately. What kind of man calls his ex-wife during his own wedding? What could he possibly be thinking? The phone kept ringing incessantly. Brittany and I exchanged looks, and I reluctantly answered, only to be met with Cody's panicked voice. "Anastasia, Help me. His shout was almost like a scream. With a sigh, I prompted him to continue. What is it? I didn't want to talk to him for even a minute, let alone hear his voice in my ear. But it seemed Cody was far too desperate to notice my reluctance. Despite the coldness in my voice, Cody kept rambling. Nicole's dad, he's in a gang. It seemed like he was calling from a bathroom at the venue. Given how his voice, though hushed, echoed strangely, his tone was shaking, but I responded flatly with a simple, I see. The truth is, I had already known that her father was involved with a gang. The day after Brittany and I left the house, the detective I had hired called me, asking me to come to his office immediately. I had already received the investigation report, so I wondered why he would need to see me again. Still, I went as instructed, only to be greeted by the detective's grim face. He had some additional information to report. Your ex-husband's mistress is indeed the daughter of a company president, but her father, though not a major figure, is part of a gang. I couldn't hide my surprise, and the detective explained that he had contacted me because he thought there might be danger if I got involved. He sipped his coffee, trying to calm himself. Since Brittany was with you when we met before, I waited to tell you separately. So far, they don't seem to be targeting you. Considering how generously they paid the compensation, it seems they have little interest in you and Brittany. The detective let out a long sigh. Honestly, since you've already received the settlement, it's best to cut ties with your ex-husband completely. It's a shame, but it's safer. I nodded quietly. The idea of gangs was something I had only ever seen in TV dramas, but knowing they were real was terrifying. Even if they weren't immediately hostile, I had no desire to provoke them any further. Besides, I didn't care who Cody's mistress was or what her background was. Whether or not I could get compensation from his mistress didn't matter to me. What I couldn't forgive was how he had discarded me and his mother like trash. Please, Anastasia, hide me. I beg you, Cody pleaded. No. I coldly rejected his plea. From Cody's disjointed explanation, I pieced together that the wedding was packed with terrifying guests who were clearly not ordinary people. His friends, who had been invited without any knowledge of Nicole's background, were visibly shaken and quickly left the venue. Since Brittany wasn't attending, it seemed like the only people left at the wedding were Nicole's family and their acquaintances. You two must be struggling without any income, right? I'll pay for your living expenses, so please, help me. Cody's voice trembled as he begged through tears, but I had no obligation to help him. Still, I glanced at Brittany, wondering how she felt. She shook her head slightly. I don't have a son, Brittany said firmly. Nodding at her words, I rejected his plea once again. We're fine. We don't want anything to do with someone who's married into such a dangerous family. And don't worry about money. Both Brittany and I have our own income. I heard Cody gasp in surprise on the other end of the line. What he didn't know was that his mother and I had steady income all along. Though Brittany had limited mobility, she had been working from home to save up for the day when she might need full-time care in a nursing home. Initially, she barely made over $100 a month, so she hadn't mentioned it to Cody. By the time she started earning a more substantial income, Cody and I had grown distant, and his spending habits had spiraled out of control. Brittany feared that if Cody found out about her earnings, he would waste even more money, so she kept it from him. I discovered her secret when she discreetly gave me money to help with living expenses. Inspired by her, I found my own work-from-home job to do during the caregiving breaks. Now, together, we were making a decent income. Please, I'm begging you. His voice grew more desperate. Sensing an opportunity, I casually dropped a bombshell. Oh, by the way, didn't you and Nicole start dating about 4 months ago? Her pregnancy seems to be at 6 months. I wonder whose baby that really is. A loud sound echoed in my ear. He must have dropped his phone. From a distance, I could hear Cody muttering, "What? Her baby isn't mine." He sounded confused, mumbling to himself. Then whose baby is it? Smartphones these days were so sensitive that they even picked up his whispers. As I recalled the details from the additional investigation report, I prepared to end the call and pulled the phone away from my ear. But just before I could hang up, an unfamiliar male voice spoke up. "Hey, Cody, the groom's missing, and everyone's waiting for you." A rough voice chimed in. Brittany, who had been silently observing, stopped me from ending the call. Her curiosity piqued. "Brandon." Cody's trembling voice came next, followed by a strange chuckle. Apparently, the man speaking was Nicole's father. "Brandon, you didn't know our family's in a gang." It seemed Cody had either picked up the phone, or it had been handed back to him, and his tiny whimper was unmistakable. "Relax, we're not going to hurt you. You've done us a favor by marrying Nicole and taking in Big Brother's kid. We'll make sure to treat you well," Brandon said, laughing heartily as if he were slapping Cody on the back. Cody's confused voice followed. "What? Big Brother? What? You didn't know that either? The baby in Nicole's belly is Big Brother's child." Brandon laughed unapologetically. "Sorry about that." Brittany and I exchanged stunned looks. Cody had really gotten himself involved with quite the woman. We had already known the baby wasn't his, but finding out it was a gang leader's child, that was a whole other level of trouble. "Hey, you didn't seriously think you could get involved with Nicole and then just divorce her, did you, Cody?" Brandon's voice shifted from the previous lightheartedness to something far more menacing, a real threat. Even listening through the phone, I felt a chill. Cody, who was there in person, must have been pale with fear, trembling uncontrollably. I glanced at Brittany, wondering if we should be concerned, but she cut the call without hesitation. "Are you sure that's okay?" I asked, surprised. Brittany shook her head slightly. "It's fine. This is all his doing. Besides, do you really believe in those Hollywood-style gangsters? Come on, Anastasia, let's eat." There was a chance Cody was exaggerating the situation, trying to manipulate us into letting him move in. Smiling at Brittany's reassurance, I sat down, and we ate our now slightly cold meal. A few months later, a loud banging echoed through our apartment door, followed by the rapid ringing of the doorbell. I paused, halfway through wiping Brittany's feet, and looked over at her in confusion. "What's going on?" "I'll go check," I said. "Is something happening?" "Anastasia, don't open the door completely, just in case," Brittany warned. Nodding, I cautiously opened a door, leaving the chain locked. "Anastasia." There he was, Cody, looking gaunt and ragged. His sunken eyes filled with terror as he glared at me. I gasped and took a step back. Thank goodness I had left the chain on. "Please, help me, Anastasia. I'm begging you." His filthy, disheveled appearance repulsed me, and I quickly tried to shut the door. But Cody wedged his fingers in the gap, trying to force it open. Though the chain held, the door gave slightly under the pressure. I bit my lip hard, frustrated. "Mom, Anastasia, please, I'm begging you. Hide me." After discovering at the wedding that Nicole's child wasn't his, Cody had decided to ask for a divorce right after the ceremony. "No one told me her parents were in a gang. You said she was the daughter of a CEO. And now you're telling me the baby isn't mine? This is ridiculous. I'm getting a divorce." He had apparently slammed the divorce papers down in front of Nicole. But Nicole, lounging on the couch in her loungewear, barely glanced at the papers. She continued lazily playing with her smartphone, her feet propped up carelessly. "Did you ask your ex-wife or something?" she had asked, unfazed. She rubbed her barely noticeable baby bump absent-mindedly as she scrolled through her phone, completely disinterested. Cody had expected her to panic or at least be a little rattled, but instead, it was Cody himself who was left reeling. "I told her, I married you because I thought the baby was mine." I demanded an explanation, but then Brandon walked in, ignoring Cody's trembling plea. Brandon had apparently taken one look at the divorce papers and ripped them up without hesitation. If Cody truly wanted a divorce, Brandon had told him he'd need to come up with $100K. $100K. I couldn't help but exclaim in shock at the outrageous amount. There was no way Cody, just an ordinary office worker, could ever gather that kind of money. Of course, Cody had tried to explain this, but Brandon's response had been blunt. "Then take out a loan, or do whatever you have to. This is compensation for hurting my precious daughter." Nicole didn't care about me at all. All she wanted was a replacement father for her baby. He started to cry, but I felt no sympathy. While the sum was shocking, it changed nothing. What did he expect? From the moment I learned Nicole's family was involved with a gang, I knew the idea of a happy, peaceful marriage was a fantasy. It made no sense for Nicole to marry Cody, even if Brandon had paid off the compensation. There was no real benefit for her. It was only natural to suspect ulterior motives. Who knew what her true aim was? But even if Cody somehow paid $100K, would that really be enough to secure a divorce? I doubted it, but none of that mattered to me or Brittany. Could Cody truly be asking us, the wife and mother he discarded, to pay his way out of this mess? I stared at him in silence, my gaze cold as ice. Cody, oblivious to the disgust in my eyes, hastily apologized. "They've started picking me up from work, making sure I don't run off," he said, his body shaking as he described how he'd managed to escape under the pretense of an urgent business trip. Apparently, he had been sneaking away during work hours, searching through real estate agents, looking for accessibility-friendly rental properties to track us down. "Look, I'm not asking for the full $100K. Just a little bit, please. If I don't pay, I'll be—" He was pleading now, desperation clear in his voice. $100K. If you pay that, you can get a divorce, right, Brittany?" I spun around in shock at Brittany's sudden question. Was she seriously considering giving him the money? I opened my mouth to stop her, but Brittany smiled calmly and motioned for me to stay silent. "Yes, with $100K, I can finally be free of Nicole." His tear-streaked, snot-covered face lit up with a flicker of hope as he looked up at his mother. But the love and kindness he was searching for were not there. "Then work for it, and pay it yourself. This has nothing to do with us," she said firmly. Cody froze, utterly stunned by his mother's cold rejection. "What?" "But Mom, your son is in trouble here." He reached out in a desperate attempt to cling to her, but Brittany calmly brushed him aside with one hand. "I've already told you I don't have a son. My family is only Anastasia," she declared softly but decisively. Cody, lightly pushed back, stood there, vacant-eyed, as if the life had drained out of him. "Come on, Anastasia. Whoever he is, send him on his way. Let's have some coffee," Brittany said with a light smile. "Is that really okay?" I asked quietly, unsure. Brittany smiled as if nothing had happened. He would never be able to call her mother again. Even if he did, there would never be a reply. It seemed he had finally realized just how much damage he had caused. tears and snot still smeared across his face. Cody stared blankly at us. Resolute, I spoke. Please don't come back again. As I moved to close the door, heavy footsteps approached. I glanced to see who it was, wondering who could be walking so roughly. A man with a large scar across his face was walking toward us with a sleazy grin. I felt a shiver run through me as the man flashed a smile. Sorry about him, he said cheerfully. We'll be leaving right away. The man, still smiling, grabbed his arm and forcefully pulled him to his feet. The mismatch between his friendly tone and his actions made my head spin. Brandon, why? Why are you here? Cody asked in a weak voice. The men who had come with Brandon quickly flanked Cody, grabbing him by both arms as if to ensure he couldn't escape. You said you were on an urgent business trip, but then you stayed in this quiet residential area for too long. We got worried, so we came to pick you up, Nicole's father scolded, poking Cody in the back, as if chiding a child. Well then, we'll be taking our leave, he said with a wide grin. That smile made him all the more terrifying. Brittany and I nodded repeatedly, too scared to do anything else. As they dragged Cody away, I averted my gaze and quickly closed the door. I locked it and turned to face Brittany. They really were gangsters. It seems so, Brittany replied quietly. My heart was still pounding. Unable to calm down, we held each other's trembling hands, exhaling deeply. Judging by the way things had gone, Cody's situation would likely become even more severe now that he had tried to run away. We didn't know why those men were so fixated on him, but it didn't matter. We had no intention of getting involved. As long as they had no interest in us, the best thing we could do was to let time pass and forget. A few months later, Brittany and I changed our phone numbers and moved to a new town. We had just signed a contract on our accessibility-friendly apartment, and giving it up was hard, but we couldn't stay somewhere with those kinds of people knowing our address. Luckily, we managed to find another accessible place. After the move, neither Cody nor Nicole's father ever came looking for us again. At Brittany's suggestion, we also formalized our bond through adoption. Now that Brittany and Cody were divorced, legally speaking, we were no longer family. But with the adoption, we were officially mother and daughter, which brought us peace of mind. Taking care of Brittany isn't easy, and it would be a lie to say it isn't hard, but for us, it's a small issue. Brittany stopped her home-based work after the move, and she now attends adult day services during the day. I manage to balance my work around those hours, continuing my remote job. Handling everything in a two-person household by myself is tough, but thanks to Brittany's previous work, we've been getting by just fine. As long as we have each other, I think we can continue to enjoy our lives as mother and daughter.
What a relief it is to know she'll be away for a while. I was preparing to stay overnight for my brother Sam's wedding. It's been a while since I took paid leave and left the house I share with my in-laws. I head towards the front door with my luggage for the celebration. I hear Ellie's voice from behind me. Don't ever come back. Why don't you get a divorce while you're at it? Yes, I'll do as you wish. I reply calmly, smiling as I absorb Ellie's malice. Sensing her mocking spite, I leave the house. Before going too far, I wave towards my home. Thank you for everything all this time. Though I don't recall Ellie ever taking care of me, I feel incredibly lighthearted somehow. I hurry to where my precious family awaits, pulling a slightly large suitcase. The hotel stay is for 2 nights and 3 days. After that, it's still a secret. Ellie doesn't yet know the fact that I'll never return to this house as a resident. I'm Maria, a 48-year-old working housewife. I work as a company employee while busily managing household chores. My husband Jim and I are the same age, and we've been married for over 30 years. We were introduced by an acquaintance, but we're a couple with shared values and get along well. The only lonely part is that Jim's job is that of a so-called sailor. Working for a maritime company, Jim can be away from home for over a year at times. Still, our relationship is good, and we've been blessed with one son. We live in a house together with my in-laws. Until recently, I was primarily responsible for caring for Jane, Tom's mother, who lived with us. Tom is my father-in-law. I use my income to have a helper come during the day. In return, I'm the main caregiver after coming home from work. That arrangement continued until Jane passed away. Maria, thank you so much for everything. I'm sure Jane was happy too. She was grateful to you until the very end. Tears spill over at Jim's warm words. I owe a lot to Jane, who passed away surrounded by generations from children to great-grandchildren. When I was young, it was Jane who taught me, a young woman focused only on work and unfamiliar with housework, how to live simply. She was a kind and fun person. Though there were tough times, I feel like she was smiling most of the time. It's all thanks to Jane that I was able to continue my job from my youth without quitting, even working reduced hours during caregiving. The caregiving that must have been such a burden all along feels nostalgic and dear now that it's over. I never imagined that my surrounding environment would change so much immediately after. Due to his job on ships, Jim is often away from home for long periods. I'm proud of Jim's work, which is indispensable for logistics, but it's an unfavorable condition for me living with my in-laws. As soon as Jane passed away, Ellie drastically changed her attitude. Until then, she tried to appease me with a kind voice while pushing all the caregiving onto me. But as soon as the caregiving ended, Ellie started neglecting me. When going out, she brings back souvenirs for everyone except me. When passing by inside the house, she deliberately bumps into me with her shoulder. Her attitude is so blatant that I'm more surprised than resentful. On top of that, my son Kevin, who happened to be home, says this to me. Hey, Grandma's started saying nasty things again. This is an old story from when Kevin was just 4 years old. There was an incident with Ellie. Ellie told Kevin groundless bad things about me, and Kevin himself, upset by it, reported it to the whole family. Your mom is cheating. She said she's going to abandon Kevin eventually. Your mom doesn't work and is just full of faults. Even your dad doesn't come home because he hates your mom. Got it? I was shocked that she was teaching him such lies. I wasn't cheating at all, and every day I went to work and did housework, leading a truly busy life. Moreover, the reason Jim was away was definitely work. It's ridiculous to take such a joke seriously. Besides, no matter what you say to such a small child, he wouldn't understand. Tom and Jane were furious at Ellie for sulking like that. I was too busy to comfort the saddened Kevin. I remember feeling relieved when Jim came home later and severely scolded Ellie. Let's return to the present. Right now, Jim is away for work. Maybe because of that, Ellie was visibly getting carried away. I thought I'd have more free time now that the caregiving was over, but Ellie was working me to the bone. Every day she would hand me recipes for elaborate dishes and make a fuss telling me to cook them, or tell me to do a major cleanup. The other day, she invited the neighbors over, and while I thought they were watching a DVD drama with a large group, I was made to clean up the room that was a mess with snack garbage and drinks. It was extra work during the busy time just before dinner, so even I was getting irritated. You're really slow. Are you still not done? Hurry up and make dinner. She says that to me as I'm sweating from cleaning, but when it's actually dinner time, she's too full from snacks to even sit at the table. Just as I was appalled by that, this time there was a complaint from Kevin. She says she can't stand you. That it would be better if you disappeared. I'm going home. I feel sick. Wouldn't it be better to live separately from Grandma? I think Dad would understand. I soothed the dissatisfied Kevin and see him off to the station. Of course, I can't leave things like this. I'll have to discuss it properly with Jim next time. The day after Kevin went home, I was troubled by something other than Ellie. It was a sudden onset of poor health. My hands and feet were cold, but my face would suddenly get hot and I'd break out in a sweat. The symptoms of menopause seemed strong today. From around last year, there were times when I felt strangely unwell, and I was told at the hospital that it was menopause. I'm not on any medication yet and am just monitoring the situation, but there are painful days. The stress I felt from hearing about Ellie's words and actions from Kevin might have been a factor. By evening, my condition had worsened, and I was lying down in my room. "Hey, why are you sleeping? What about dinner?" Ellie comes stomping in with loud footsteps. I have a headache and it's painful to even get up, so I can't deal with her. I thought about pretending to sleep, but she suddenly ripped off my blanket, so I had no choice but to get up. "Dinner," Ellie says while clapping her hands. If it's dinner preparations, she should do it herself. Who does she think she is, always making only me do it? Ellie used to manage the kitchen, but lately, I'm the only one in the kitchen. The only time Ellie takes the lead in the kitchen is when Jim is home, and even then she only does things like plating. Maybe she's the type who can't cook at all.
I'm not feeling well. I think it's because of menopause, but housework is absolutely impossible. Please make dinner today, Ellie.
I managed to squeeze out my voice while talking becomes a hassle. Ellie also had severe menopause. I had already started living with her, so I'm certain she took out her frustrations on me quite a bit. That's why I thought if I said it was menopause, she would understand this pain. However, Ellie's reaction was the complete opposite of what I expected. Snorting, Ellie suddenly turned a bag upside down over my head.
Ah.
I let out a small scream at the things raining down. In the dim room, and having just woken up in poor health, I couldn't tell what it was. But the next moment, I noticed the wafting scent of potatoes. The bag Ellie had turned upside down was a nearly empty bag of potato chips. I understood that I had potato chips dumped on me, but I was dumbfounded for a while at the completely unexpected event. "Don't slack off." Clicking her tongue, Ellie leaves the room. I'm just lying down because I'm in pain, but I get yelled at and feel like clicking my tongue right back. Rather than getting angry at how she could do such a thing, I fall into a strange sensation, as if I've seen a rare animal. I felt that the limit was definitely approaching. About half a year later, I took paid leave from work and was preparing for a trip. It was to attend my brother Sam's wedding. Sam had been living with his girlfriend for several years, and they decided to get married. They live in Boston and wanted to have the wedding there. Since it's quite far from here, I booked a hotel for a 2-night, 3-day stay. I decided to participate with an overnight stay, making it a little vacation. Sam offered to pay for the hotel, but I declined. They had already adjusted the wedding date to accommodate my schedule, so I wanted to cover at least this much myself. It's a small ceremony with just family, but I'm looking forward to this rare occasion when relatives gather. Since no one might prepare meals if I'm not there, I make a week's worth of pre-made dishes for now. The day before leaving, while eating dinner, I tell my in-laws about the pre-made dishes in the fridge, and Tom thanks me. But as expected, Ellie still seems to dislike everything about me. "You're being so condescending about going out of your way to do this. Why are you even going to your brother's wedding? I bet it's a remarriage, right? Nothing good." Saying that with a grimace, she was glared at by Tom, who was next to her. Well, glaring doesn't faze her much.
Both Sam and his partner are getting married for the first time though.
I reply, tilting my head, and Ellie laughs out loud with a vulgar expression. I wondered what was so funny, but it seems she's misunderstanding a bit.
They're both 40 and it's their first marriage? They must be pretty worthless to not get married until that age. Your brother is no spring chicken, right? And yet a flashy wedding, how shameless.
She's either confusing him with another brother, or she's completely forgotten about my family composition. Actually, I have 3 younger brothers. Sam and I are 14 years apart, so he's still quite young.
No, the one getting married this time is my youngest brother, so he's still in his early 30s, and his partner is in her 20s.
When I explain, Ellie gets angry thinking I pointed out her mistake. But she soon laughs nastily again. Gross.
The partner is 20? Isn't that an age gap like parent and child?
I'm appalled at how she really doesn't listen to what people say. This time Tom also seems to have noticed the mistake and clears his throat. Holding back a sigh, I respond.
I said in her 20s, not 20. I heard there's a 4 to 5 year age difference with Sam, so they probably don't look like parent and child. When we video called the other day, she seemed like a level-headed woman.
I end the conversation with my in-laws and prepare for departure. I should be able to see Kevin and my parents at the venue too. I carefully pack a nice outfit to wear to the ceremony in my suitcase and meticulously check that I'm not forgetting anything. I can hear Ellie talking loudly to Tom from the living room.
I'm so relieved to think she'll be gone for a while.
I endure while receiving her undisguised malice. If I get angry here, she might do something to my carefully packed luggage. That would defeat the purpose, so I'll endure until I leave the house. The next morning, I head to the front door pulling a slightly large suitcase.
Don't ever come back. Why don't you get a divorce while you're at it?
Ellie's voice makes me pause for a moment. I start walking toward the front door again and answer clearly.
Yes, I'll do as you wish.
My voice comes out calmer than I expected. I'm probably happier about this situation than I realize. I had already reached my limit of endurance. Actually, I had contacted Jim beforehand and had been steadily preparing for this day.
Saying irresponsible things again. I wish you'd hurry up and actually do it.
Ellie has no way of knowing what's to come and is eating snacks and laughing since morning. It probably hasn't been too long since she woke up, yet she can sure eat a lot. I decide to walk to the station after leaving the front door. Before going too far, I turn around and wave at the home I'm used to living in.
Thank you for everything. Except Ellie.
I've been in this house's care for a long time. Jane, Tom, Jim, Kevin. I stick out my tongue while thinking that I don't recall being taken care of by Ellie. I feel incredibly lighthearted somehow. I pull my slightly large suitcase and hurry to the place where my precious family awaits. I plan to stay at the hotel for 2 nights and 3 days. And after that, I'm scheduled to move into a house where I can live alone. I meet up with Jim at the wedding venue. This was planned in advance. In fact, the reason the ceremony was timed for this period was because it was a date Jim could attend. Good work. I brought this. Jim takes out the divorce application with a lonely smile. The husband section hasn't been filled out yet. We'll fill it out together after both of us are satisfied. It will be our last joint task as a married couple.
Thank you for picking it up. Let's fill it out later when we get back to the hotel. I booked a twin room. I hope that's okay?
I feel bad for my brother getting married today, but this is also a new start for us. I hope they'll forgive me for the filing date being the same as the wedding day. Of course, I won't tell everyone today, but I'll have to let them know about the divorce later.
Of course, a double room would have been fine too. Thanks for making the reservation.
Jim and I laughed together. I'm sure no one can imagine that these two will be filling out divorce papers in a few hours. But I traced the letters on the divorce application with my finger, wondering how heavy this single sheet of paper is. If we submit this, we'll no longer be husband and wife. With just one sheet, even though we've been together for over 30 years. I'm sorry. Truly. Jim apologizes, but I shake my head. Because the time I spent with Jim was truly happy all along. I knew from the beginning that he was someone who would rarely be home when I married him, and there was nothing I disliked. It's just that even though I loved him, I couldn't get along with his mother.
Don't apologize. You were a wonderful husband, Jim. Let's be good friends from now on.
I convey my heartfelt love. Jim takes my hand with tears in his eyes.
Thank you for everything.
Jim repeats it over and over, making me tear up too. I secretly think that I'll have to say these tears are because I'm happy about Sam's wedding. The next day, Jim returns to his parents' house alone. Jim explains the situation to his parents. At first, Tom is just surprised to hear about the sudden divorce, but when he learns the truth, he turns red with anger.
What are you thinking? Kicking out the person who took care of my parents until the end?
Ellie seems shaken and confused as Tom yells at her furiously. I was the main one handling Jane's care, but Tom, who had strong arms from a young age, helped with strenuous tasks like bathing. Moreover, in the later stages when Jane was bedridden, turning her over was also Tom's job. In a sense, Tom and I were caregiving buddies. But Ellie truly never helped with anything. Tom never said it out loud, but he seemed dissatisfied with that.
Ellie was bad at housework from the time we got married in the first place. I kept quiet thinking she at least gave birth to our son, but she took advantage of Mom's leniency and even avoided helping out. She's completely different from Maria, who did everything.
Tom's complaints heat up further. When words comparing her to me came up, Ellie seemed to try to retort, but she couldn't because Tom started talking before she could open her mouth.
You should have been the one to leave. Such a hardworking, good person. Do you have any idea how much luxury we enjoyed with Maria's salary? You haven't earned a single cent.
When money comes up, Ellie is in a weak position. Because she's never worked outside the home. Jim covers our household expenses, including what his parents use. As a sailor, Jim has a good salary, and his parents put all their pension towards pocket money. To be honest, our family is well off. Even the expenses for the children and Jane's care could actually be covered by Jim's earnings. Nevertheless, the reason I worked was because working itself was for my own benefit. That's why I have no resistance to using my earnings for my family. I gave gifts to my in-laws like trips and theater tickets, and on birthdays and such, I had them go to slightly high-end restaurants. Actually, it was also an investment to secure my own time, not just for my in-laws' sake.
It's not too late, even now. Jim, go apologize now and ask Maria to marry you again.
Tom finally goes so far as to say that. Perhaps realizing how precarious her position is, Ellie is completely flustered. It's too late to be flustered now. There's no way to prevent the consequences of her actions from coming back to her.
I built this house. Get out, Ellie.
Tom tries to kick Ellie out in a rage. Naturally, Ellie continues to resist, screaming and making a fuss. Just when I think she's raised her voice in anger, she scratches her head in frustration. That sight was bizarre and apparently quite frightening.
No. I won't leave. I won't get divorced. How am I supposed to live on my own at this age?
In the end, Ellie resists by screaming and crying, but she's no match for Tom's strength, even in his old age, and is dragged outside. He even closes the door and locks it. Ellie clings to the door crying loudly, and the neighbors, alarmed by the commotion, call the police. Although he has no choice but to open the door when the police officers speak to him, Tom's anger doesn't subside. For a few days after that, Ellie and Tom lived separately within the same house. They don't exchange a single word. They try not to see each other's faces as much as possible. Rather, when Tom enters the same room, Ellie runs away looking frightened. Unable to continue living like that, they end up calling even Anne, their sister-in-law who lives far away, for a family meeting.
I'm getting a divorce,
Tom declares, but the discussion stalls because Anne sympathizes with Ellie and opposes it. So Jim explains the situation in detail, going over each and every instance of harassment I endured. The fact that she even told lies and badmouthed me to Kevin, trying to make him hate me, his mother. He even showed a message he had Kevin write, recalling what happened back then, as a testimony from Jim and I's son. About what she did to me when I was suffering from menopause. In addition to conveying my testimony about this, Tom, who was apparently a witness, also expresses his disapproval. I didn't know, but Tom had told Ellie after that to stop doing such things. He says he also tried to convince her to apologize, but she didn't follow through. And then there's what happened this time. She spoke ill of my brother and mocked me, telling me to get a divorce and leave. It was all done while Jim was away, and the fact that she hid her true nature in front of Jim makes it even worse. He adds that I did all the housework and that Jane's caregiving was accomplished by just me and the helper.
If your husband's mother did the same thing in that situation, what would you think, Anne? And if her father-in-law got angry for your sake, whose side would you take?
Asked that by Jim and falls silent. Seeing that, Ellie apparently got terribly angry.
Even Anne is betraying me. Ungrateful, after I gave birth to you.
Hearing that she didn't say after I raised you here, I'm impressed by Ellie's honesty. I had heard this from Jim for a long time.
It was mostly Grandma who raised Anne and I. Mom was always out having fun with karaoke and drinking parties with the neighbors.
Perhaps with that past in mind, after hearing about the harassment, Anne only looks at Ellie with contempt. In the end, I think the only ones who worked as housewives in this house were Jane, whom I took care of until the end, and myself. Ellie is certainly a mother who gave birth to 2 children. But she hardly did any housework. Looking back on it again, the family realizes that she never did housework, and Ellie completely loses her standing. Perhaps finally understanding the situation she's in, Ellie stops screaming in anger and sobs. In the end, it seems they decided not to divorce out of pity, but Tom is considering living separately from Ellie. Hearing that, I offer to meet Tom once. Everything that happened after I left, as I mentioned earlier, is what I heard from Jim.
If Dad was going to get that angry now, he should have helped you from the beginning. But I guess it's no use for me to say anything when I couldn't be there.
Sighing dejectedly, Jim drinks his hot coffee. This is a cafe we've loved since we were young. Jim orders coffee, and I order a cream soda for the first time in a long while. After finishing listening to the story about Ellie, I smile gently as always.
Don't be down. You were away from home for work, right? It's a very important job. I fully understand that there are many people who would be in trouble if you didn't go, Jim.
There's no lie in my encouraging words. Jim's job is admirable. I think it's amazing that he's involved in maritime transportation for years at a time as a so-called sailor to support people's lives.
That's why I endured until now. But I'm sorry this time. I still love and respect you, Jim. But I couldn't bear to continue being a family with your parents.
I was finally able to put into words what had been weighing on my chest for so long. Jim nods with a slightly lonely but understanding look. More than anything, I'm happy that he understands with a fair perspective instead of siding with his parents unconditionally just because they're his parents. Jim was looking at me, smiling unintentionally, as if dazzled for some reason. It was much later that I heard what Jim felt at that moment. Jim says he thought,
"Ah, she's beautiful."
at that time.
It was a smile that shone and was more beautiful than ever before.
Jim, who said that to me, also looked more wonderful than ever. Let's go back to the story. The day after meeting Jim at the cafe, I met with Tom with Jim's cooperation. The final touch is my revenge. Tom, who comes to the cafe with Jim, is a bit more dressed up than usual because it's an outing. After lightly chatting about the weather and such, I quickly get to the point.
I heard from Jim that you're considering living separately from Ellie. I think it's fine while you're healthy, but it will be difficult for you alone in many ways in the future, right? Since you've taken care of me so much, if you really do live separately, I'll also cooperate in caring for you in your old age.
Hearing that, Tom is clearly happy. And lives far away, and even Jim, their son, will be away for long periods once he goes on the ship. Tom was someone who had never cooked, cleaned, or done laundry. He would desperately want my help since I cared for Jane until the end.
Of course I'm going to live separately from Ellie. No, I think it's better to get a divorce after all.
Tom says with a frown and his arms crossed. I hoped Ellie would definitely be kicked out. But it seems the situation is progressing in an even more unfavorable direction for Ellie.
If I suddenly die, Ellie will surely act all high and mighty. Let's properly separate before that happens. I'm sure that's better.
Jim makes a face as if to say here we go again at Tom, who suddenly started speaking clearly. Tom has a strange decisiveness, and when he thinks something should be done, he acts on it all at once. Sometimes he goes a little overboard by moving too quickly, but that's just his personality. Even though I know that, I agree with a smile.
As expected, Tom, you're thinking it through properly. It's wonderful that you're looking ahead.
After living together for many years, I already know how to handle Tom. I grin, knowing that if I push his back like this, Tom will really go through with it. Jim smiled wryly, seeming to sense my intentions, but didn't try to stop me. Perhaps it's only natural since he was even angrier than me about Ellie's behavior that he learned about this time. Tom stands up energetically, saying he's going to get the divorce papers right now. I decided to introduce him to the lawyer I consulted with for divorcing Jim. From this day onward, Tom starts moving in earnest towards divorce. It's clear that Ellie will now lead a lonely life. 1 week later, I went to the place that used to be my familiar home, but is now just my former in-law's house. It was to retrieve belongings like clothes that I couldn't take with me. I had taken all the valuables, but it was impossible to take absolutely everything. Clothes, books, memorable photos, pictures Kevin drew when he was little, and bedding and furniture I bought with my salary. The longer I lived in this house, the more personal belongings I have. This day became the last chance to see Ellie. By this time, it had already been decided that Ellie would also get divorced, so she was quite flustered. So she started apologizing profusely to me with a pale face when I came to get my things. "Maria, forgive me. Please, please forgive me. It was just a joke. Really. Please come back and convince Tom." I completely ignored her and gathered my belongings. After the apologies and pleas continued for a while, Ellie stands up breathing heavily. Perhaps angry at being ignored, Ellie starts insulting me again like before.
Who does this woman think she is, even though I'm being humble? It's the worst that you came to this house. Hurry up and leave, and die alone and lonely.
She spat that out after a simpler string of abuse that I can't let others hear. Even so, as I ignore her and pack things into a cardboard box, Ellie suddenly screams and lunges at the box. I avoid her in surprise, and Ellie takes out the clothes I had just packed into the box. The neatly folded clothes scatter on the floor. Ellie starts stepping on and kicking the clothes even more.
Cut it out!
Jim yells and glares at Ellie. Ellie, who had always been told that Jim was an obedient son, freezes with a look as if it's the end of the world. I restrain Jim with one hand and turn an emotionless face towards Ellie.
I am no longer your daughter-in-law. And you're not my mother-in-law, Ellie. We're completely cutting ties. Thank you for nothing all these years. I'm grateful to Jane and Tom, though.
I take my clothes from the feet of a dumbfounded Ellie. I don't even fold them and just stuff them into the box and pick it up.
Don't touch my things, you stranger. Goodbye.
I say that to Ellie, whose hair is disheveled, and hurriedly leave the room. I don't want to be in the same space as that former mother-in-law any longer. I call Jim and arrange for him to carry the rest of my belongings. I get into the car Sam drove over and wait for him to be ready. I can still hear Ellie shouting something from inside the house, but I think it's pointless to even listen. Apparently, after we left, Ellie cried and screamed terribly while hitting her own head for some reason. From our perspective, there was never a possibility of reconciliation from the start, but it seems to Ellie that she had cut off her last rope of hope herself, and she deeply regretted it. But it's none of my business if she regrets it now. Eventually, about a month later, Ellie was finally kicked out of the house and started living alone in an old apartment. Since she's still their mother, I hear Jim and sometimes visit to check on her well-being. They say Ellie now lives in old clothes as pajamas without even taking showers. She seems to lament her poor life, not going out except for shopping, eating deli food from the supermarket and cheap snacks. Of course, it seems she split assets with Tom in the divorce, but unfortunately it wasn't a significant amount, and she's struggling with anxiety about her old age.
I don't know about Anne, but I won't support her at all.
It's only natural though. Jim shrugged as he reported to me. Jim, being a sailor, is quite well off, and Ellie had always been proud of that. She probably never imagined being abandoned to this extent by that son. It's all because she neglected me, the wife Jim chose. Still, isn't it completely ironic that Ellie herself, who said,
"Don't ever come back. Why don't you get a divorce while you're at it?"
ended up getting divorced and leaving, and is now in a position where she can never return? If you wish for someone else's unhappiness, you should be prepared to be unhappy yourself. 5 years after the divorce. I'm enjoying a leisurely life with a cat in a place about a 30-minute drive from my former in-laws' house. As a result of looking for a place easy to commute to work, I chose this apartment. It's a lovely room with good sunlight and great conditions, pets allowed, or rather welcomed, even though it's a rental. Now I visit my former in-laws' house where Tom lives alone about once a week and make a lot of pre-made dishes. Thanks to that, I feel I've gotten closer to Tom than before. Anne, who lives far away, seems to feel indebted to me for taking care of Tom even after the divorce. I still keep in touch with Jim. In fact, whenever Jim returns from a long sea voyage, we definitely go on a date. That's how close we are. We're having a fresh relationship, going to the movies and art museums together, even at this late stage. We send each other messages using unfamiliar stickers and spend days on long phone calls, which is unexpectedly fun. Kevin, who comes home to see the two of us when he's off work, laughs seeing us like that, saying,
"Is this a fake divorce? You just went back to being lovers.
But actually, we were never lovers. We got married right after meeting, so we practically had no period that could be called a romance. So you could say I'm building a romantic relationship with Jim for the first time now. We also have a secret promise. That promise is to remarry if we ever completely stop needing to be involved with Ellie. According to Jim, it means when Ellie passes away, or when she lives with and/or enters a facility, so we no longer need to check on her well-being. And apparently, they've already started discussions with and her husband about choosing between living together or a facility. The day we reunite may come unexpectedly soon. It's a bit embarrassing for us, who have been together for over 30 years and are now close to 50. But I'm very happy to be having my first romance with Jim, whom I've always cherished. Days when things just aren't clicking with my husband, Nicholas. Amidst that, the sound of unlocking the door, followed by a familiar female voice. It was my sister, Melissa. She was loved by our parents in a way I never was. But it wasn't just her. Nicholas was there too.
Melissa, why today? I quit my job over there. Thought it's about time we got married. Melissa, don't tell me the person you're marrying is.
Your guesswork hasn't improved, has it? With a mocking smile, she tells me.
The defective one with infertility. Got pregnant right away. Finally, an heir. Congratulations. But that child.
An heir? I almost blurt out, but then fall silent. Kicked out of the room, I was left to contemplate my future alone at a cafe. And I thought, their child is impossible. The documents I brought with me tell that story.
I'll definitely get back at them.
I muttered in a low voice, unintentionally. My name is Amanda, 32 years old. A working housewife, married for 5 years. Nicholas is a former colleague, 3 years my senior. When we married, I moved to a different company in the same field, thinking it might cause problems if we stayed at the same place. I thought we had a marriage of mutual respect. But lately, things have seemed off. The reason is clear. We've been unable to have children for some time. But it's not just my fault. Yet, it's always me who ends up being blamed. It would be better if it was outright malice. But no, it's just unnecessary meddling with a look of concern. That's what's troubling about the words of our parents, from both sides. No, there was one person with pure malice. Melissa. Since we were young, I've always been compared to Melissa.
Melissa is so cute. Amanda is the smart one.
Well, that's still okay.
You really can't compare to Melissa in charm or cuteness. Well, with that face of yours. Poor thing, compared to Melissa. Maybe try to be a bit more feminine?
These were the words always thrown at me by relatives and neighbors. I've known this since I was a child. So, I made sure not to place my value there. Luckily, I didn't hate studying, so I leaned on being smart to get by. But as I got older, my parents' words began to irritate me.
You're at the age, maybe care a bit about how you look? If you study that hard, you won't even get a boyfriend, you know?
Half serious, half spiteful, I ignored my parents' words. And then there was Melissa.
You should just stay the way you are. That way, I stand out more, right?
Frustrated and dismayed, I went to college and then got a job. Eventually, I started dating Nicholas, a colleague, and we got married. I took this as an opportunity to change jobs to a different company in the same field. I would have preferred to stay at my original company, but then the strange pressures came, this time from around me. And from Nicholas, especially.
It's not really good for a married couple to work at the same company, so you should change jobs, right?
He said it as if my changing jobs was the obvious choice. I had my doubts. But everyone I consulted said the same thing: you should be the one to change jobs. The exception was a female colleague or two. And a contact in the same field said, it's a pity, but introduced me to a workplace that was smaller but had a more flexible work environment. Thanks to that, I've been able to continue working in a job I find fulfilling even after getting married. But since getting married, the voices of both sets of parents wanting grandchildren have gotten louder. Working so hard.
We'll never see a grandchild at this rate. Take it easy a bit. With Nicholas's income, Amanda, you should be fine. Have kids and relax already.
The trouble is, these words are meant without malice. They think they're being kind. That's why it's so frustrating. The only saving grace is that we live apart from both our parents. But as we get older, their appeals become more fervent, to the point where even I started thinking about preconception care. That's when I began to seriously consider having children, visiting hospitals for consultations, and trying out. However, Nicholas seems to be quite passive about it.
You know, you've been bringing up that topic a lot lately. If you keep on it, even I'll start losing interest. Why should I have to get tested?
Each time, I explained. Both our parents and his are pressing us for children. Considering our ages, I'd like to have children while we still can. So, I want his cooperation. Yet, all he says is,
children will come when they come.
After about a year of such exchanges, I was angry enough to nearly drag Nicholas to get tested. He sulked, and his attitude towards the doctor's advice was lackluster. This led to even less intimacy between us. Even if I stay up late waiting for him on nights before his days off.
What? You're still up?
I end up getting snapped at. And then,
I'm just not in the mood with you anymore.
Was told. Surely, the way I handled it could have been better. The matter of children should be a decision made together. I know that. Eventually, calls started coming in from his parents' house.
Lately, Nicholas has been coming over for meals quite often. Are you two all right? Wait, he goes there when he's late? Yes. He seems reluctant to come home. Hey, Amanda, are you taking proper care of him?
I was bewildered by such questions. It's because you all are rushing us, I wanted to retort. After hanging up, I stopped waiting for Nicholas to come home. Honestly, I was tired of waiting for him. I never thought this would happen when we decided to get married, or even in the early days of our marriage. Nicholas, as a colleague, was dependable, and as a lover, he was someone I could envision a future with. I believed he was someone with whom I could build a new family at the beginning of our marriage. Never did I imagine I'd come to feel more at ease without him. Eventually, I started to think it was fine if Nicholas avoided coming home late into the night. I became increasingly absorbed in my work. Launching new projects, staying late at night for them. Our home no longer felt like a family. The usual "when will we see grandchildren" messages kept coming from both our parents and his. But I had started to let them slide. If he's not interested, whatever I do would be in vain. I was even losing the sense of purpose in our living together. Then one day, when I came home, the test results were in our mailbox. By then, I had almost forgotten about them. Considering it was a relatively short waiting period. Yet, within that brief time, our relationship had grown increasingly cold. Thinking it was too late to matter now, I still opened the test results. There were no issues on my end. And when I looked at Nicholas's, I checked the document once, twice, thrice. But no matter how many times I looked, the result was the same. Nicholas had zoospermia. There was no way we could have children together. Looking at the documents, I felt an urge to laugh, thinking, there's no longer any point in staying married. Ah, this is hopeless. Let's divorce. Those words ran through my mind. That's when it happened. I heard the sound of the door unlocking. Is it really okay? A familiar female voice spoke. Melissa? I rushed to the entrance in surprise. But there, not only Melissa was present, but Nicholas was there too. Oh, Amanda, you're here?
Why? Why are you two together?
I couldn't think of any reason for these two to arrive together. After all, Melissa had been working far away, having left our family home long ago.
What? You still have that blank, unapproachable look.
But the snide remark was unmistakably Melissa's.
Well, never mind. Let us in, it's getting cold out.
As she spoke, Melissa made her way into the house.
Melissa, why today? Oh, Amanda, didn't you hear from Dad and Mom? From Dad and Mom? I quit my job over there. Thought it's about time we got married.
I've never heard such a thing before.
Well, but it's no use telling you, is it? Right.
Saying that, Nicholas puts his arm around Melissa and gently leads her towards the living room. Could it be?
Melissa, don't tell me the person you're marrying is. Your guessing is as bad as ever.
When did this happen? With a mocking smile, Melissa tells me.
The defective one with infertility. Got pregnant right away. Finally, an heir. Congratulations! But that child...
An heir? Surprised by my almost saying something I didn't mean, I hurriedly fell silent.
Do you have a problem with that? No, nothing. Hey, Nicholas, do James and Kayla know about this? Yeah, I told them.
Really? Melissa too?
Well, Nicholas came to our house when I returned home.
So, that's what it was. This was happening in my family home with these two. Then there's no point in me being married to this person. Whether my feelings showed on my face.
I hate it. That attitude of yours, always.
Melissa didn't answer my question, instead she yelled at me.
I also can't stand your I know everything attitude. That's right, I'm going to live here now, so you should leave. Yeah, I don't want to share the same air as you two either.
I packed my things and closed the door of the house I had lived in with Nicholas behind me. Dragging my suitcase, I entered a cafe to start with. While having a light meal, I searched for a place to stay, feeling a growing anger inside me. Divorcing is fine. I'll do as you wish. I've always, in one way or another, done as desired. But this is the result. I'll throw away all of this. Neither my family nor my in-laws would protect me at all. Did my parents not notice anything between Melissa and him when they met at the family home? No, that can't be. Surely, when Melissa returned home having quit her job, my parents chose Nicholas's place for her new stage, even if it meant driving me away. Both my parents and in-laws would celebrate them if they heard about the child. Despite rushing me all this time. But that can't be. The documents I brought with me tell that story.
I'll definitely get back at them.
I muttered in a low voice, unintentionally. I decided to stay long-term in a business hotel for now. I need more time to decide what to do next. With my job being so busy now that it's on track, even if I rented a short-term apartment, I wouldn't have time to cook. Staying at a hotel where they clean for you is easier if you're just sleeping there. With eating out and laundry, commuting to and from work is sufficient. It's much more comfortable than a home where I always have to think about household chores. And as I started to think that my post-divorce room could be as simple as this, someone came looking for me at the company.
Kevin Garcia?
I don't recall the name written on the business card handed to me by the receptionist. Anyway, upon meeting, he greeted me very politely.
I'm terribly sorry for the inconvenience you've been through because of Melissa.
Does that mean you are, perhaps, Melissa's? I managed to swallow the words, the father of her child.
Yes, we're dating. Even now, at this very moment, Melissa is mine.
Ah, this person might be strange. I thought to myself. What exactly do you want with me?
I'm truly sorry about Melissa's recent behavior towards you. Well, it is a nuisance, but
I was at a loss for what to say to him.
I would really like to take Melissa back, but she's at your family home now, isn't she?
That's when I felt a sense of incongruity. His way of asking left no room for disagreement, yet there was a distance in it. Are you saying you can't get in touch with Melissa right now?
That's right.
He sighed deeply, looking disheartened.
For some reason, as soon as she quit her job, I've completely lost contact with Melissa. Despite sending so many messages, whereas before, I would get a reply at least once for every 10 I sent.
Kevin showed me the screen of his smartphone. Then, I inadvertently let out a small gasp. The messages Kevin sent to Melissa were lined up in a row. Is this guy sending messages every 5 minutes or what? And the contents are like, what are you doing now? I was thinking about you, what time will you be home today, and so on. I wondered how he could work with all that messaging. Then, without being asked, he started talking about how he met Melissa.
Melissa was a colleague at my company. She helped me a lot. I've always admired her, but she never showed interest in anyone, just worked hard year after year.
Can such a woman suddenly go home and steal her sister's husband? Whether he noticed my skepticism or not, Kevin continued.
Yes, I've had feelings for her for over 10 years. And I thought they finally bore fruit 3 months ago.
So at that time, you finally started dating?
We spent the morning together, so it means yes.
Well, that's debatable. But soon after, Melissa started making mistakes at work and eventually fell ill, quitting her job without my knowledge. I realized I hadn't heard from Melissa about why she quit. Maybe there's a reason for it. I listened carefully as Kevin spoke rapidly. So when I asked a colleague about her health, I thought, maybe she's pregnant with my child.
Well, indeed Melissa is pregnant now. I knew it.
He stood up, overcome with emotion, looking up to the sky.
It must be fate, us being together. Because it was just one time, you know? And to conceive a child from that, it must be destiny. But didn't she run away from that destiny? No way, Melissa is just shy about my love.
Incredible. I've never seen anyone say such things with a straight face before.
Amanda, please let me see Melissa. I have to propose to her properly. But right now, Melissa is having an affair with my husband and claiming that child is his. That must be her considering my future, since I'm younger. But I'm also quite mature, you know.
35 and 34, not exactly what you'd call mature. Anyway, this guy is devoted to Melissa, to my sister. I decide to test how devoted he really is. How devoted are you, exactly?
So right now, I'm thinking about divorcing because of my husband's affair with Melissa.
You're getting divorced.
Well, since she's claiming to have a child and all, something must have been done. So, I'm thinking of suing for damages.
Then Kevin immediately responds.
Damages? How much are we talking? Dollar how many K? If it's about suing Melissa, I'll pay.
You're wealthy, aren't you? My own question sounded silly to me.
Yes, actually my family owns the company I'm working at.
Wow. I wanted Melissa to know the real me, so I've never mentioned that. but my father has been telling me to move from the current company to the headquarters. From his wording, it seems Kevin is indeed a wealthy heir.
So when I talked about the transfer to Melissa, she started responding to my evening invitations differently and accepted my proposal. Really?
At first, she accepted. But as days went by, she started becoming distant. Maybe she started feeling suffocated by his incessant messaging. Before I knew it, Melissa had quit her job without consulting me. No doubt about it. She ran away. Maybe she thought her being pregnant would be a burden to me. Look, I've even prepared a ring. He took out a ring with a dazzlingly large gem.
I don't think it's a burden.
Those words naturally came out of my mouth. No, it's not about being a burden. Probably, she just physically couldn't stand him anymore. Melissa has always been praised as beautiful and cute by those around her, and indeed, she was. There was never a shortage of men around her. But those men also only saw Melissa as a plaything. And from her side, she probably never felt owned by anyone. But then, she ended up pregnant. Unexpected as it was, given her age, maybe she finally wanted to latch onto someone. So, she got involved with this guy who had always been hanging around her, only to run away due to his overly possessive nature. Kevin sighs deeply. Melissa, whom I've loved for so long. Just when I thought she had finally accepted me. And when I started talking about marriage seriously, she disappeared. I thought her parents might have forcibly taken her back, so I came here. Amanda, could you please lead me to Melissa? Honestly, I was taken aback by his one-sided torrent of words. But there seemed to be a way to use this guy to my advantage.
I understand. I just have one request,
I said, smiling at Kevin. Then, I hired a lawyer, gathered Nicholas and Melissa, and both sets of parents for a discussion. The meeting was in a hotel conference room. Not a cheap business hotel where I was staying, but a proper city hotel. This is a pretty nice hotel. Not bad taste for you. It was me, my lawyer, Nicholas, Melissa, and both sets of parents, 6 people facing each other. In front of everyone was a set of coffee and tea prepared by the hotel, filling the room with a wonderful aroma. Then, my lawyer started the conversation.
Thank you all for gathering today. Regarding the divorce case, let's confirm first. Both parties agree to the divorce, correct?
Nicholas answered with a relieved expression.
Of course. Melissa is pregnant. There's no point in staying married to Amanda, who hasn't shown any signs of pregnancy no matter how long we wait.
The two exchanged smiles. The lawyer continued without reading the room.
However, since the relationship between the two can be considered an affair, Amanda will claim damages from Nicholas. Damages?
Kayla raised her voice.
Oh, come on. It's Amanda's fault for not getting pregnant despite our support. Are you saying Nicholas is to blame?
Kayla is right, Amanda. My father chimed in.
Besides, can't you be happy for Melissa having a child?
I was dumbfounded by their logic.
So, you're saying you don't want to pay the damages?
I asked bluntly.
No, that's not what we said. Anyway, if you think a child has been conceived, that's because you've committed an act that can be considered adultery, right?
Nicholas hesitated in his response.
The amount I'm asking for damages is reasonable, isn't it? I'm not asking for something like $100,000.
I then had my lawyer present the amount of damages to Nicholas.
Ugh. Well, I never said I wouldn't pay.
Nicholas grimaced at the amount. So you'll pay?
Yeah.
Relieved by the unexpectedly modest amount. He signed the divorce papers without fuss.
Thank you very much. Wait a minute.
Melissa, looking puzzled, called out to the leaving lawyer.
Just damages to Nicholas, is that okay? Don't I need to apologize to Amanda? Melissa, you shouldn't even have to ask. You're jobless and pregnant now. No, Melissa, it's fine.
I replied nonchalantly, sipping my tea. She exaggeratedly sighed in relief and smiled at me.
Oh, good. You're being kind for once.
Me, kind? I put down my teacup on the table and smiled. Hey, Melissa.
I wonder if you can still say that after seeing this. What?
I handed Melissa the envelope containing the test results that had arrived earlier.
What's this?
As she read through the documents, her expression gradually changed.
What is this all about? No, Nicholas, you mustn't look.
With that, Melissa tried to hide the document from Nicholas, who was attempting to peek. I interrupted Melissa's actions.
Nicholas, these are the results of the tests you took before. I happened to take them with me when I left. I thought today would be a good day to give them back to you.
I told Nicholas clearly.
Tests, you mean?
Nicholas seemed to remember after a moment and snatched the documents from Melissa's hands.
This is...
He was astonished, his gaze shifting between the document and me.
As you can see, you're diagnosed with azoospermia. What?
Both sets of parents murmured in confusion.
So, there's no way a child could be between you and Melissa.
It's impossible.
Is that true, Nicholas? Let me see that.
The document was passed from hand to hand among the in-laws. Nicholas was holding his head in his hands.
So, that means...
Mother's gaze shifted towards Melissa's belly.
Melissa, you lied to me?
Nicholas asked her in a low, dark tone.
No, that's not it. I love you. I don't care if you love me or not. The fact that it's not my child is the only certainty. What is all this? Whose child is it? It's... Answer me!
At his shout, as if on cue, there was a loud knock on the conference room door.
Come in.
Responding, the lawyer stood up. I'll take it from here.
All right then. I'll go file the divorce papers.
Thank you. And the person who came in exchange was...
Hey! Melissa! I finally found you.
Such a cheerful voice. With a bright red bouquet of roses, Kevin entered the conference room with a beaming smile.
Finally found my beloved.
Melissa shrieked in a high pitch, retreating back in her chair until she was cornered against the wall. Finally, she found her voice.
Wait, why are you here? Why? You're asking me why? How can you ask me that? There's no escaping from me, you know.
With a big smile and holding the large bouquet, Kevin slowly approached Melissa.
Actually, I'm the one who booked this conference room at the hotel today. Huh? Wait, Amanda, you know this guy?
Melissa glared at me with sharp eyes in an instant. I sighed deeply.
Didn't you find it strange that I'd book such a nice hotel conference room?
Indeed, she just had mentioned it was unusual for me. If it were up to me, I'd have used a conference room at the business hotel where I was staying. I certainly couldn't afford a place with a solid table, fresh flowers in the corner, and coffee and tea brought in from a proper cafe. There's no way I could afford that.
Let me introduce him. This is Kevin Garcia. He came to my company the other day, worried about Melissa. Yes, I was worried,
he said, placing the impressive bouquet in front of Melissa. Such an impressive bouquet. Could there be 100 roses? Kevin stood in front of Melissa, leaning against the wall and looking down at her. "Melissa, were you planning to give away my child to someone else? Or were you thinking of raising it alone without telling me?" The words shocked the parents and in-laws.
Well then.
"So, you're the real." Kevin was at a loss for words. Unconcerned about the onlookers, he continued to speak solely to Melissa.
"Melissa, I truly love you from the bottom of my heart. Why won't you believe me? Yes, from the moment we first met 10 years ago."
His continuous, breezy machine gun talk left everyone dumbfounded and silent. Kevin's refreshing narrative, remembering even the most surprising details from their first meeting, left me half amazed, half exasperated, yet listening once again. Eventually, Kevin took Melissa's hand, trying to gently slide on the ring he had taken out.
"Stop it!"
Regaining her senses at the sparkle of the gem, Melissa shook off his hand and vehemently shook her head.
"No, no. You're not okay. It's decided."
"Why am I not okay?" "As I've just said, I won't let you want for anything. My parents have always been worried about me not finding a marriage partner. But now, they can be relieved. And with a child, too."
"No, wait, Amanda. You set this up."
Her wrists, her neck, covered in goosebumps. It's clear she's truly repulsed. "Don't say I set this up."
"Why did you bring him here after I ran away?"
"Because during this situation, he said he'd pay whatever amount for you." I glanced at the parents briefly.
"Let me introduce myself again,"
he said, handing out his business card and putting the ring back in its case. The titles on the card shocked my father, and my mother was astounded by the size of the gem on the ring. "Oh." Then, the parents who had been protecting Melissa withdrew their hands.
"What? Dad, Mom?"
"Sorry, Melissa, we really can't protect you anymore."
"Besides, he's the heir of the group company you worked for." "Maybe, but even so."
The fact that she was physically repelled by him was not entirely lost on the parents.
"So, you both agree to our marriage then?" "Well, yes."
"Having the real father is better for the child, isn't it?"
"Dad. Mom."
Her plea for help was ignored as her parents had already started shaking hands with Kevin.
"Thank you. Then Amanda, I'll pay the money later."
Saying that, Kevin pushed the bouquet to Melissa and swiftly picked her up despite her protests.
"No way!"
Melissa screamed and resisted as much as she could, but no one moved to help. Then, escorted by someone, Kevin left with Melissa through the door they had opened. I thought I heard Melissa's distant scream, but it was none of my concern. Shall we conclude here?
"Amanda!"
Nicholas suddenly raised his voice towards me. "What?"
"Can't we make another go of it?"
"What are you talking about?" I took out my smartphone and called the lawyer who had just left.
"Hello, how did it go?"
"Yes, it's been officially filed." In the midst of this chaos, the lawyer had filed the divorce papers at court.
"The mistake was you telling me to quit my job and move to another workplace right from the start." "Did I say that?"
I was astounded.
"Well, I'll be expecting the compensation." "Wait, Amanda! I was wrong, so please."
"It's too late now." And with that, I too left the conference room. Since then, he has returned to his parents' house and has been paying the compensation as part of the property distribution. I've heard rumors that the mood in Nicholas's former in-laws' house has been gloomy. They never expected their son to have azoospermia. It must have been a hard fact for my former in-laws to accept. They've been advising Nicholas to go for treatment multiple times, but he finds the burden too much and is thinking of leaving home again. Not only that, Rumors of him having an affair with his wife's sister and getting divorced have spread within the company, and his prospects for promotion have been blocked by the senior management. The source of these rumors were my former colleagues. Unhappy about me moving to another company when we got married, they contacted me as soon as they heard about the divorce and spread the news of Nicholas's misconduct far and wide. Apparently, his assertions that the failure to conceive was my fault also fueled the rumors of his azoospermia. And as for Melissa and her parents,
I wish you could talk to Kevin and somehow get Melissa to meet us.
I often receive such calls from my mother. Kevin, since then, has taken Melissa to his family home and they apparently got married easily. I received a transfer of money from Kevin as a form of thanks. And he frequently sends me messages with photos attached, titled "Today's Melissa." It's not a significant amount compared to the number of messages he sends to Melissa, so I just forward them to her parents. Of course, it's not out of kindness. After all, Melissa's parents can't discern her location from those photos. They come to me pleading, but I consistently ignore their calls. The parents thought they could get close to Kevin's family, but it's not that simple. What he wanted was Melissa and the child she was carrying, and his kindness towards the parents seemed to be temporary. Even if they complained about kidnapping or anything else, they had already agreed to their marriage, so there was nothing more they could do. Without being able to establish a relationship with the wealthy family they hoped for, the parents can only watch as the favored Melissa becomes increasingly worn out in the photos.
Good work today.
Staying late again today?
Yes. I just want to do a bit more research before leaving.
Since then, I've moved out of the business hotel and into a short-term apartment. It's not very spacious, but I splurged on a bed comfortable enough for me to sleep alone, focusing on getting a good rest in my own space. Thankfully, that means minimal cleaning is needed. Work has become busier with increased business trips, sometimes not returning for half a month. But those days are truly fulfilling. I don't know what the future holds, but for now, I want to enjoy working by myself for a while.
Our son is going to live with you, Mom. Even if he's sick, being with your grandchild every day is a blessing, right?
The voice of my son on the phone dripped with malice, as if mocking me. I hugged my grandson tightly, covering his ears so he wouldn't hear that voice. My grandson, who just turned 7, was recently taken to the hospital. There, he was diagnosed with a certain illness, and my son and his wife left him at my house. Coming home from work, I found my grandson sitting dejectedly at the entrance. My heart nearly leaped out of my chest. He told me himself,
"I was abandoned by Mom and Dad because I'm sick."
I wish they could understand how I felt. I immediately called my son. What followed was a brazen declaration of abandonment. My daughter-in-law, likely beside my son, let out a vulgar laugh, saying,
"We don't want to catch his illness. Let the short-lived elderly take care of him."
She hurled insults worse than my son's and cut off the call with a harsh laugh. The phone, abruptly disconnected, never connected again. Looking at my trembling grandson in my arms, I made up my mind. I will raise him. First of all, my name is Frida. I'm 57 and a company employee. I married my husband at 22 and gave birth to our son, Morty, the following year. My husband adored Morty, and the three of us lived happily together.
He's so adorable. I'm so happy such a cute child was born to us,
my husband would say, holding Morty and beaming with joy. But that happiness didn't last long. When Morty was 2, my husband suddenly fell ill and passed away. I was heartbroken, but I had no time to grieve. I had to raise Morty alone. From then on, I worked tirelessly, raising Morty as a single mother. I never remarried. Luckily, I had been a full-time employee since before marriage, so I managed to raise Morty without financial struggles. Now Morty is 34. He works as a company employee in a general business, but Morty has always been somewhat flighty and easily influenced. He got his current job because a college senior suggested it, and he just went along with it. When Morty was 26, he married a woman his age named Maya. Maya was very strong-willed, and I never had a good impression of her even during their dating days. For instance, Maya would frequently visit our house but never once said hello or goodbye. I gently brought this up to Maya at one point. "Maya, it's great you come to visit, but I'd appreciate it if you'd say hello when you arrive." Maya reacted defiantly, visibly annoyed. "What? You don't have the right to tell me what to do. I'm a guest here. I'm doing you a favor by visiting. It's really unpleasant to be told such arbitrary things." I was stunned by her brash response. Morty, on his part, would say things like, "Mom, don't be so stiff." I thought it was common sense to greet when visiting someone's home, but it seemed not to apply to Maya. Morty appeared completely under the thumb of the assertive Maya. After Maya left, I reiterated my point to Morty, but just let it go. He just brushed it off. Incidents like these often happened, so I didn't have a good impression of Maya. Of course, I repeatedly told Morty to be more responsible. The couple rented an apartment after their marriage and started living near our house. The following year, they had their first son, Darren. My first grandchild. Children grow up so fast, and in no time, Darren turned 7. One day, as I was returning from work and my house came into view, I noticed someone sitting at the entrance. Who could that be? As I got closer, I realized it was Darren. Having been busy with work recently and not seeing my son's family or Darren, I was both surprised and overjoyed to see him after so long.
"Darren, it's been a while. What are you doing here?"
When I called out to him, Darren slowly lifted his face to meet my eyes.
"Grandma."
Seeing Darren's face after such a long time, I was lost for words. His face had white, patchy areas, and his eyes were swollen red as if he had been crying. I tried to remain as calm as possible and invited Darren inside. "And? Darren, what happened? Can you tell Grandma about it?" I gently asked him. He nodded slowly and began to speak in bits and pieces. "Well, I got a skin disease. I forgot its name because it was complicated, but it's a rare disease." Seeing young Darren's lips quiver and his face turn pale, my heart ached.
"A rare disease. Is that really what you were told?"
"Yes, Mom and Dad said that. Ever since I got this disease, they stopped looking at my face. And today, they brought me here to Grandma's house and told me to wait for you, and then they went away." Shocked by Darren's story, I hurriedly called Morty. To prevent Darren from hearing the conversation, I asked him to stay in the living room and drink juice while I moved to another room.
"Morty, I heard from Darren. How could you leave him at our doorstep without telling me anything?"
Mom, you're back. Yeah, Darren has this rare disease called pityriasis simplex. It's really troublesome. Pityriasis simplex. I remembered hearing that name before. I had seen a feature on it on TV once. Wasn't it just white spots? White spots are common in children and not a rare disease. Is it really a rare disease? The dermatologist said it's pityriasis simplex. It's a complicated name, so it must be rare, right? So, since we could catch it too, Maya suggested you should raise him, and I agreed. So, Mom, please take care of Darren for us.
Thanks. What? You call yourselves parents? That's so irresponsible.
I shouted in anger at Morty's outrageous statement. Then Maya took over the call, and her shrill voice echoed.
Morty and I are still young and have our lives ahead of us. It would be terrible to catch such a creepy skin disease. So let the short-lived elderly take care of him. Bye.
With that unilateral shout, the call was disconnected. Stunned, I quickly took out a book from the bookshelf that listed various diseases and their treatments and looked up pityriasis simplex. Thank goodness. It's just white spots. He'll be fine. The research confirmed that pityriasis simplex was not a rare disease and, with proper treatment, could be cured in most cases. I felt relieved and simultaneously furious at my selfish son and daughter-in-law. I realized they had abandoned Darren at our house, assuming it was a rare disease from its complicated name. How selfish of them. I will definitely raise Darren well. I muttered with determination and returned to the living room. I smiled at Darren, who looked anxious. Darren, don't worry. Your illness is curable. Let's go to the hospital together tomorrow. Really? Darren, thinking it was incurable, lit up. Yes, it's not a rare disease, so don't worry. And Darren, from today, you'll live with Grandma. It's okay. I'll make sure you're happy. Let's live together happily. Darren looked a bit bewildered, but then nodded. Thank you, Grandma. And smiled. Time passed, and 9 years went by. I turned 66, and Darren became 16. During these 9 years, I couldn't make any contact with my son and his wife. Darren, in his teenage years, didn't talk much lately but grew up kind, occasionally cooking meals. Now retired, I support Darren with my pension and retirement funds. Then one day, my son and his wife, who disappeared 9 years ago, suddenly appeared at our home. What do you want now, after all this time? I coldly confronted them at the entrance. How dare they show their faces after not contacting us for 9 years? Hey, we saw you on TV the other day. Surprised us. Darren is amazing. Earning so much money at his age, huh? Apparently, they had seen a recent TV interview, Teenage Genius Inventor. Maya, standing next to Morty, also chimed in with a sneer. Getting a patent and all, that's really amazing. You must be so rich now, huh? Indeed, Darren was skilled at inventing, and he had recently obtained a patent. It was clear from their attitude that Morty and Maya believed Darren was making money from his patent and had come here today with that in mind. They hadn't expressed any concern for Darren, they only talked about him becoming rich. They're still the worst couple. Then Darren appeared behind me. He must have heard our conversation. Hey Darren. We've come to take you back. A son is a son, even if he suffers from an illness. Let's live together again with your dad and mom. Morty's exaggerated behavior was almost laughable. To this, Darren responded coldly. Huh? Who the heck are you? Darren, now a high school student, was old enough to understand the situation. He realized from the conversation that his parents were after money, and felt no attachment to them, having been abandoned. Morty and Maya seemed taken aback by Darren's indifferent attitude, but quickly regained composure and started talking fluently. Darren is sick, so his life will be tough. That's why Maya and I will support him. Morty declared. What? After you abandoned me, you have the nerve to act all fatherly now? Don't pretend to be a dad. Darren, having listened to them for a while, clicked his tongue in disgust and scoffed. I was also astonished that they still mistakenly thought Darren had a rare disease. Darren's face had completely healed. Morty, Maya, you've been mistaken all along. Darren doesn't have a rare disease. Pityriasis simplex is just white spots, common in children. Darren completely recovered in about a year. Stunned by my explanation, Morty suddenly changed his attitude and shouted. We've been tricked. Screw you. Why didn't you tell us something so important? Maya followed suit. We were kidnapped by an old woman. You've taken our child for 9 years. Give back our child, Frida, you old kidnapper. And cursed at me. Ignoring their rants, Darren quickly took out his mobile phone and called the police. The police are on their way. And just so you know, getting a patent doesn't mean you become rich instantly. You need companies to use the technology, and only then do you get patent fees. It's not some epic-making discovery, nor is it a widely used patent, so it's just a dream to be filthy rich. The money I've received so far has all gone to materials. So, I don't have any money. After Darren explained calmly, Morty and Maya turned red with anger, screaming.
What the hell? Then why did you call us here?
Seeing their reaction, Darren sighed. I don't know.
You came here on your own, so don't get angry at us.
Just go home. Seeing Darren laugh, Morty shouted.
Don't you get smart with me.
His fist was clenched, ready to lash out at Darren, so I instinctively jumped forward to intervene. Just as Morty was about to swing at me, a loud male voice rang out.
Stop it!
A police officer was outside the window. He had seen Morty about to hit Darren through the curtain and acted quickly. While his shout startled Morty, another officer quietly entered from the entrance, stepping between us and Morty. Morty waved his open hand, feigning innocence. He then sneered at Darren.
You might be an inventor or whatever, but don't get cocky. Live with that old woman for the rest of your life.
With that parting shot, he left. The police asked if we were okay, and we said yes. After explaining the situation, we were advised not to let my son and his wife into our home again, and I nodded in agreement. The police reassured us they would help if needed, leaving me relieved. After the police left, I asked Darren.
Are you okay?
Concerned about his mental state. I knew he must be hurt, even if he acted tough, after being treated that way by his biological parents. However, Darren admitted.
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't shocked. I knew my parents were the worst for abandoning me without understanding my illness. But I didn't expect them to be that stupid, thinking I'm rich just because of a patent. All those nice words, thinking I'd agree to live with them.
He sighed deeply, clearly displeased, and ruffled his hair. Then he looked down at me, smiling. But Grandma, why did you try to protect me when I was about to get hit? I'm 16 now, and I'm bigger than you. I don't need protection. He asked me as if he was dumbfounded, which left me dumbfounded. What are you talking about? No matter how old they get, you want to protect your kids. Their size doesn't matter. Darren groaned softly, then turned away. I'd hate it more if you got hurt. He said gruffly, heading to his room. It seemed he was worried about me. I felt happy, realizing how kind Darren had grown. After that, I quickly contacted a certain person. A few days later, I went to the house where my son and his wife currently lived, accompanied by a certain person. When I rang the doorbell, Morty opened the door lazily and was shocked to see me and the person beside me.
Lean! Why?
The person next to me was Lean, Morty's friend. Morty's voice startled Maya, who also came from the back.
Lean!
Her face turning pale. Ignoring me, the couple was visibly shaken by Lean's arrival. Long time no see, Morty, Maya. Lean greeted them, and Morty, looking agitated.
How did you find this place?
He asked. I answered his question.
When you came to our house the other day, you mentioned to Darren that you now live in a single-family home in this town.
I didn't miss that.
But how did you find this specific house with just the town's name? We didn't give you any detailed address.
Morty exclaimed in panic.
That's true. Knowing just the town's name wouldn't be enough to find your address, so I hired a detective to focus on this town. A detective?
Yes,
and it didn't take long for them to find you. Then, I contacted Lean and we decided to come see you together today. Using a detective is cheating. That's no different from stalking.
Lean glared at Morty.
I've got nothing to say to fraudsters. Anyway, Morty, Maya, return the money I lent you.
Lean's stern voice filled the room, causing the couple to tremble. Lean, a friend of Morty's, had lent them money. I only found out about this after my son and his wife had disappeared for some time. Lean came to my house to consult about lending them money and not being able to contact them anymore. He came all the way to visit me, wondering if they might have returned to a parent's house due to financial struggles so bad that they had to run away to avoid paying him back, and asked me to let him know if I ever found out their whereabouts.
You two told Lean that Darren had a rare disease and you were in a tight spot financially, and got $5,000 from him by playing on his sympathy.
My words made my son and his wife look down, trembling.
It wasn't just Lean, you did the same thing with others, borrowing money here and there. Then, when repayment became difficult, you abandoned Darren at our house and disappeared without paying back anyone, exploiting people's kindness for your own gain. You're the lowest of the low. No. But we really thought Darren had a rare disease. Yes, we really did. That's why we borrowed the money.
Frustrated with their excuses, I shouted.
What are you talking about? Even if you thought so, you never treated Darren's condition. You took him to a dermatologist once and then neglected him, not spending a dime on his treatment. So where's the money you borrowed from your friends? Do you have it with you if you didn't use it for treatment costs? Of course, you don't. You probably squandered it on yourselves. As parents and human beings, you're the absolute worst. Shame on you. Ugh.
They fell silent.
The real reason you left Darren at my house wasn't because you were afraid of his disease spreading, it was to evade the debts you owed. Months before abandoning Darren, you frequently went on trips and started wearing only branded items, didn't you? No, but it's true that we didn't want to be around Darren because his disease was creepy.
Even at this point, they still tried to justify. And with despicable excuses, too. Sighing deeply.
Darren is fortunate not to have grown up with parents like you. He might have ended up with a twisted personality because of you. I'm so glad he has grown into a kind and admirable young man.
I said. My son and his wife made sullen faces, not seeming convinced. Lean said sternly to the two.
I have a good idea who else you've defrauded, so I'm planning to contact them and start a class action lawsuit. You better be prepared. A lawsuit? Wait a minute. Isn't that a bit too drastic?
Too drastic?
Not at all. Unless you can repay right now all the money you borrowed from me and others, which I guess you've already spent, right?
Lean pressed. My son and his wife were speechless.
I never imagined being betrayed by a longtime friend like you, Morty. I became distrustful of people for a while after you two disappeared. I will never forgive you.
Lean said, glaring at them with hatred. I told my son and his wife.
Don't worry about Darren. He's a high school student now, capable of making his own decisions. Please don't contact him anymore.
I was firm in cutting ties with them. Months later, despite being threatened, Morty and his wife still hadn't repaid the money. They were sued in a class action by the people they owed. Though each person was owed less than $10,000, the total was overwhelming for them. They ended up selling the house they had bought just a few years prior. But because they had a mortgage, most of the proceeds went to paying that off, and the little that was left went towards the lawsuit settlement. Even though it was their most valuable asset, I couldn't believe they had to sell their house. It turned out they sold the house intending to move back into mine. I learned this sometime after the lawsuit, when I got a phone call from an enraged Morty.
Mom! What the hell? Our house is gone. What's going on?
What do you mean?
As the for sale sign says, I sold the house and land. It's quite obvious, isn't it?
Indeed, I had decided to sell the house and land even before they faced the lawsuit. Real estate agents said that vacant houses are hard to sell, and that it was better to demolish and sell the land. Following their advice, I demolished the house and quickly sold the land due to its good location. The money went towards moving with Darren. Actually, Darren was attending a high school quite far away, and commuting from the old house was quite the journey. So we moved closer to his school for a shorter commute. When I explained this, Morty started shouting.
What? Where are you living now? We have nowhere to live since we sold our house. Tell me your address, we'll live with you. There's no way I'll tell you. One reason I sold the house and land was to cut ties with you. I won't tell you where we live, and I'm blocking your number, so don't contact us ever again.
No. No way. That's too harsh. Morty was stunned, and behind him, Maya's despairing scream could be heard.
The ones who are truly terrible are you too. You don't seem to be remorseful at all, but you should reflect on your actions and attitudes. The last thing I can say to you as a parent is to learn to introspect and repent.
Goodbye, I said and ended the call, setting it to block further communication. My disillusioned son and his wife managed to find an old apartment to live in, but they seemed to be leading a tough life. Afterwards, I consulted with the lawyer hired by Lean and reconsidered my relationship with Darren. Until now, I had raised him as a grandmother. But Morty and his wife's presence was negatively influencing Darren. So, I considered legally becoming his parent through adoption. If it were recognized, I wouldn't have to divide my estate equally between Darren and Morty when I pass away. It would prevent Morty from running off with everything. I decided to check with Darren.
Darren, I want to adopt you. Not just as a grandmother and grandson, but legally as mother and son. What do you think? I respect your feelings, of course.
After a moment of silence.
Yeah, I want to be your son officially.
Darren smiled shyly and said. With Darren's consent, I contacted the family court with the help of a lawyer. Given Morty's terrible behavior, the adoption was relatively easily approved. Likely influenced by Darren being 16 years old. Darren and I successfully completed the adoption process. It was a joyous moment for me, especially knowing that he chose me over his biological parents even when he is still in his adolescence. Darren, talented in inventing, is always trying new things, and I'm living a peaceful life, enjoying watching him grow.
Standing is common sense for a daughter-in-law.
I had been preparing food and welcoming guests since the morning at a family gathering. Being 9 months pregnant, I was taking a short break on the sofa in the back. When my mother-in-law, Susan, found me sitting, her expression changed drastically as she approached me and snapped those words.
Susan, I'm sorry. I'm just having some discomfort in my stomach.
Unable to stand due to the pain, I apologized while remaining seated on the sofa. As I struggled to get up, Susan, seeming to give up, turned to leave but then shockingly kicked my stomach.
Susan, how could you?
I immediately curled up to protect my stomach, and fortunately, I didn't feel much pain.
It's your useless body that's the problem.
This was a line I was all too familiar with after always being oppressed, but I was left speechless by the shock of being kicked in the stomach. Someone, who had been silently watching this scene, waited until Susan was seated, and then. My name is Anne. I'm a 32-year-old housewife. I live happily with my husband Tom and our 3-year-old son. I am currently 9 months pregnant with our second child. Before the pregnancy was confirmed, it was decided that Tom would be transferred to work abroad alone. Although Tom insisted on staying in America, I didn't want him to give up his dream of working overseas, a goal since our dating days. After I encouraged him to the end, he promised to go abroad for just 3 years, and then he left. While I felt joy in supporting my husband's dream, there was one concern. The insidious harassment from Susan and Mike, my father-in-law. While Tom was around, they adored us, but in his absence, they subjected me to daily verbal abuse. Since Susan and Mike were kind in front of Tom, I always tried to bring him along. But for the next 3 years, I'll have to endure their malicious harassment alone, which is disheartening. However, I couldn't discuss it with Tom, knowing it would only add to his worries and considering Susan's feelings towards her son. Initially, I tried to please them by complying with everything, but no matter what, I only faced their resentment.
All I want is to get along with Mike and Susan.
Desiring a peaceful relationship with Susan and Mike, one day, I finally broke down and decided to be submissive. Then I heard shocking words from them.
You stole our precious son from us.
That's what Susan declared.
Ever since you married our son, he hardly pays any attention to us.
I finally understood the root of their relentless harassment. Susan and Mike were so overly fond of their son that they were jealous of me, his wife.
If that's the case, I can always come with him.
Startled by Susan's unexpected confession, I tried to find a solution and offered various suggestions.
The best thing would be for you to leave our son alone.
Right.
Then he might return his love to us.
I was stunned by Susan's wish. The thought of them wanting a divorce because they felt their son's affection for them had diminished gave me chills. And this distorted expression of their love even scared me.
Don't you like the idea of your son building a new family?
I asked tentatively.
New family? That's ridiculous. Our family is enough. No matter how old our son gets.
Realizing the extraordinary love they had for their only son, my husband, I was speechless.
I love my husband. I want to get along with you and Susan, but I have no intention of leaving him.
Normally quiet, this was one point I could not concede. Seeing my resolve, Susan scoffed and retorted.
Are you so confident that no matter how we treat you, you won't leave?
From that day on, their harassment only intensified instead of diminishing. At one point, knowing I was allergic to shrimp, they sneakily added it to the fried food. I was about to eat it when my husband, who always harped on about my allergy, noticed and warned me.
Shrimp? I'm sorry. Actually, this was a gift. I forgot you can't have shrimp.
Susan apologized to me repeatedly, making excuses. My husband seemed satisfied and asked her to be more careful in the future. But even as they spoke, Susan was stepping on my foot under the table. Amidst such harassment, we were leading a peaceful life when my husband's transfer overseas was confirmed. Susan and the others turned pale with shock as I celebrated.
Overseas. That's going to be hard on the child and Anne, right?
My father-in-law, Mike, really just not wanting to be separated from them, used me as an excuse. My husband said it was a decision we made together, and I knew the anger would soon be directed at me.
And, did you even consider my grandchild's feelings?
Unsatisfied with my decision, Susan interrogated me like it was an inquisition. Fed up, my husband finally spoke out.
Both of you, enough. Working abroad has always been my dream. And is just supporting me in that.
He immediately defended me.
We support you too. But now just isn't the right time, is it?
Mike seemed a bit sorry, yet unable to agree.
That's right. The grandchild is only 3 years old. It's too much for Anne.
Susan, for once, seemed to be on my side, using my name in her argument.
I'm fine. Tom and I have discussed it and decided to go for it.
I spoke up, my voice trembling slightly, trying to act bravely so my husband wouldn't worry. Realizing our determination, Susan and Mike reluctantly accepted it, though with a sense of defeat. That night, feeling sorry towards Susan and Mike, my husband suggested we all have dinner together. I had been avoiding eating with them since the shrimp allergy incident, but I decided to endure it for my husband's sake.
Then let us, the ladies, get busy preparing in the kitchen. You relax.
Susan, excited to cook for her son after a long time, went into the kitchen. Hesitant to be alone with her, I steeled myself and followed her to the kitchen.
Aren't you afraid our son might leave you when he returns from abroad?
Susan's words, still hoping for our breakup, drained the blood from my face. Realizing it was pointless to engage, I silently started preparing. While we were working on different ingredients, Susan called out to me.
And that pot over there is cool. Could you take it to the table?
Busy with preparations, I followed Susan's instructions and grabbed the pot handle with my bare hands, only to let go immediately from the scorching heat. A pot of steaming hot beef stew fell right at my feet. I burned my hands and feet. Hearing my scream, my husband and Susan rushed over.
And, did you touch it with your bare hands? I told you to be careful of burns. What should we do now?
Susan pretended to panic, but did nothing. My husband, seeing this, quickly instructed to bring a towel and ice. He also told Mike to call an ambulance. Seeing my red, swollen hands and feet, I could only cry in pain and frustration, clinging to my husband. Thanks to his quick thinking, I received proper treatment at the hospital and was told it would take 2 weeks to heal. Slowly, my spirit was breaking from Susan's escalating insidious bullying. As time passed and my husband's departure overseas approached, I made sure to avoid Susan and the others completely. Despite their vengeful attempts to visit our home or call multiple times a day, I never responded. For their excuses to see their grandchild, I sent pictures with messages. To my husband, I told him the reason for not seeing Susan was because of severe pregnancy symptoms, which he understood. Half a year passed, and the annual family gathering, highly valued by my husband's family, drew near. Knowing its importance, and though my husband said I didn't have to attend, I decided to go. I informed Susan of my attendance in advance through a message. Her reply, seemingly eager to finally vent her frustrations on me, brought back the flashbacks of my burn injury accident and filled me with more fear. Then, the day arrived when everyone was to gather. I briefly greeted Susan and Mike, then spent most of my time with relatives of my age, keeping my distance.
Standing is common sense for a daughter-in-law.
I had been preparing meals and welcoming guests since the morning at the family gathering. Being 9 months pregnant, I took a rest on a sofa in the back. When Susan saw me sitting, she changed her expression and came over to me, throwing those words at me.
Susan, I'm sorry. I'm just having some discomfort in my stomach.
Unable to stand due to the pain, I apologized but couldn't get up from the sofa. Seeing that I couldn't stand, Susan, seeming to give up, turned to leave, but then shockingly, she turned back and kicked my stomach.
Susan, how could you?
I immediately curled up to protect my stomach, and luckily, the pain was minimal.
It's your useless body that's at fault.
I was used to being oppressed by her, but I was left speechless and shocked by being kicked. Someone, who had been silently watching this scene, waited until Susan was seated, and then,
Mom, what did you just do to an on the sofa?
Someone shouted loudly, making everyone, including me, turn towards the voice. There stood my husband, who was supposed to be overseas for work.
Tom.
Susan uttered his name in a trembling voice. Painfully, I stood up from the sofa and slowly moved towards my husband.
What did you do to and just now?
He asked Susan, with an expression I had never seen before. Tom, why are you here? Until the previous day, my husband had apologized over the phone, saying he couldn't get a long leave and wouldn't be able to attend. I couldn't ask him to accompany me, knowing he had just been transferred overseas. Anne. I came back to surprise everyone. Tom's face softened as he looked at me, his expression changing completely from before. He rushed over to me, hugged me around my shoulders, and supported me.
But when I came back, I happened to see Mom and you having that interaction from the entrance.
He had been frozen for a while, not understanding the situation as he had never seen Susan like that before.
I was about to ask and what happened when Mom kicked her.
Hearing this, I realized he had witnessed Susan kicking my stomach. Looking up at my husband, I could see the anger in his eyes.
Tom, this is...
Relatives started gathering in the room, sensing the unusual tension, making the situation even more strained.
Tom, everyone is here, let's talk in the other room.
Susan tried to calm my husband with a quiet voice, attempting to diffuse the situation.
And, you don't need to say anything. I want to hear it directly from Mom.
Saying this, my husband turned his face towards Susan again. No, let's hear it here, in front of everyone. The relatives, stunned by my husband's raised voice, watched the unfolding situation in silence. The commotion got Mike and Mike's brother's attention, who had organized the family gathering.
What's all this commotion about?
Seeing the unusual situation, Mike hurried to Susan's side. Upon realizing his beloved son was there in front of him, Mike looked even more shocked.
Dad, it's been a while. I didn't want our reunion to be like this, but I just saw something unbelievable.
With Mike's presence, my husband regained some composure and continued in a calm voice.
What happened?
Mike looked slightly uneasy. He already knew Susan had done something to me. Having always turned a blind eye to Susan's bullying, he was part of it too.
It was just, and I were talking.
Susan stubbornly refused to admit she had kicked me, trying to get out of this situation. However, my husband quietly glared at her, wanting her to confess. Sensing the conversation wasn't progressing, I finally spoke up.
You kicked me in the stomach, didn't you?
I finally revealed in front of everyone that Susan had kicked my stomach. Hearing this, the relatives began murmuring.
And what an accusation! I would never do such a thing.
Susan shouted, flustered.
Never. What, Mom? I saw it with my own eyes.
My husband expressed his frustration and anger at Susan's denial and her true nature. As he seemed about to confront Susan, I urged him desperately to stay calm.
Tom, are you sure it wasn't a misunderstanding? Susan doing such a thing.
Mike continued to defend Susan until the end. Hearing this, my husband's suspicion only deepened.
Dad, even now, you're siding with Mom?
My husband was speechless at Mike's attitude, seemingly more afraid of Susan facing critical judgment than the fact she had kicked me.
Tom.
I could only hold his hand tightly. The ease with which his parents dismissed their daughter-in-law raised my husband's suspicions, bringing up a question in his mind.
Anne. This isn't the first time, is it?
My husband's intuition seemed to pick up on something from Susan's behavior. Trying not to worry him, I felt both frustrated and relieved that my strongest ally had finally appeared, bringing tears to my eyes. Realizing this wasn't the first incident, my husband asked,
Mom, what terrible things have you done to Anne?
His anger not subsiding but intensifying. The relatives intervened to stop Tom as he approached Susan and Mike.
Tell everyone here what pain you've caused, Anne.
As Susan heard this, her face turned pale. And she collapsed to the ground.
Tom, it's too harsh to treat Susan like this in her condition.
Mike began to show anger towards Tom.
Harsh? Then what about that burn?
Susan and I were shocked, as if our thoughts had paused for a moment. And the one who raised his voice upon hearing this was, surprisingly, Mike's brother.
And was burned?
Mike's brother, who had been quietly observing what he thought was a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law issue, spoke up for the first time, surprised by the unexpected development.
It seemed strange to me. That day, Anne got a severe burn holding a pot of just done beef stew with her bare hands.
My husband had been troubled by the fact that I had done something I would never normally do.
And would always check if it's safe before handling a pot with her bare hands if it were her own decision.
I always had a habit of double-checking everything. Whether it was cooking or leaving the house, which my husband knew well. So, it seemed odd to him that I would grab the pot without thinking.
The beef stew was made by Mom. Did she say something at that time?
As he pressed for answers, Susan and Mike fell silent. Some relatives defended Susan, while others expressed disbelief. I decided to reveal everything.
That time, Susan said it was cool, right?
I repeated Susan's words with courage. I explained how I was busy with my own cooking preparations that day and took Susan's words at face value without checking the pot.
I regret not verifying and ended up getting burned.
I admitted my mistake. Hearing this, Susan's expression changed, and she glared at me, shouting,
You are just trying to slander us. What kind of daughter-in-law are you?
Susan, who had been subdued, became enraged when faced with me.
I'm not stupid. I have saved our interactions as evidence.
I had secretly been collecting evidence of Susan and Mike's insidious harassment, in case I couldn't endure it any longer. My husband showed a surprised expression, then I said,
Tom, I'm sorry I kept quiet. I didn't want to worry you, and I was afraid of ruining your relationship with Susan and Mike.
The root of his parents' harassment stemmed from their affection for their beloved son. It was a twisted love, but I wanted to avoid worsening the relationship between Tom, who had been raised with much love from his parents. Susan and Mike, not expecting that I had been considerate of them, turned pale upon hearing this.
Mom, Dad, did you hear? Even after all this, and was still thinking of us.
Tom apologized to me, ashamed that he hadn't realized the situation.
And I'm so sorry my parents made you suffer this much.
Tom apologized with tears, and Susan, as if regretting how things turned out, exclaimed,
No, it's wrong. It's her fault. She stole our precious son.
It was the moment Susan's true nature was revealed. The relatives around us looked on with cold eyes. Even Mike, considering his brother's reputation, tried to stop Susan's outburst. Who stole me from you? Are you doing all this to and because of me? My husband was speechless. Not expecting such a distorted form of love where Susan's harassment was a retaliation for his affection being directed towards his new family.
I'm grateful for how you raised me. But the most important thing to me now is and our family.
He expressed his feelings to Susan and Mike. He then shared how much respect and consideration we had always shown towards Susan and her family.
Mom, Dad, I wanted you to see the irreplaceable love of your grandchildren and Anne's admiration for you.
Moved by their son's desperate plea, Susan and Mike seemed to finally realize the gravity of the situation, and Mike collapsed on the spot.
Mom and Dad, you've destroyed your own daughter-in-law's love and my trust with your own hands.
Hearing this, Susan, realizing for the first time that she had disappointed her precious son, broke down in tears. Seeing Susan crying and distraught, a part of me felt sorry for her outburst. But more so, I felt a sense of relief in her taking responsibility for this mess. Mike's brother, changing the dire atmosphere, intervened.
All right, this isn't a spectacle. The four of you, please move to a quieter room.
With those words, the other relatives awkwardly dispersed. Receiving words of sympathy and encouragement, I began to relax a bit. Supported by my husband's arm, we moved to a quieter room as Mike's brother suggested. Once the four of us were inside, an uncomfortable silence filled the room. My husband still had questions for them, eagerly wanting to confront them. However, Susan and Mike looked so exhausted that he hesitated to speak. Then, Mike's brother entered the room.
Now we can have a calm discussion. Is it true that Anne was subjected to insidious bullying?
With a stern expression, Mike's brother asked directly. After a moment of contemplation, Mike finally nodded in resignation. Triggered by Mike's acknowledgement, my husband burst out.
To think my parents would do this while Anne was protecting our child and unborn baby, it's shameful.
He voiced all the accusations as if speaking on my behalf. He revealed that the shrimp allergy, the burn, and the kicking were all acts of spite towards me.
I can't understand how Dad and Mom could hurt Anne to such an extent.
Disappointed beyond imagination, my husband's disillusionment deepened. Then, Mike's brother brought an end to the discussion.
Tom, that's enough. As your uncle, I'm deeply sorry for such a shameful sibling. I can't forgive what they've done.
He apologized to us, then rushed to Mike and struck him on the cheek.
As your brother, I cannot forgive your actions. Don't show your face at family events anymore.
He then instructed Susan and Mike to leave immediately. Susan and Mike seemed to want to say something to me, but the fact that they had kicked me remained unchanged. I ignored their expressions and stayed close to my husband's side. Once Susan and Mike were out of sight, I finally felt a sense of closure and, perhaps relieved, I broke down crying. I don't remember much about what happened next, but my husband stayed by my side until the end. After the revelation of Susan's insidious bullying, my husband forbade any contact or visits from them. This helped me avoid seeing Susan, and gradually, my emotional wounds began to heal. The overseas transfer that was supposed to last 3 years was cut short by my husband, who didn't want to be away any longer. He returned to America after just 1 year. Initially, I was a bit apprehensive, but I supported his return, prioritizing the safe birth of our second child. Now, we are eagerly awaiting the birth of our second child as a family of 3. Susan still sends daily messages of apology, wanting to mend our relationship. When I express my fear of seeing them, my husband continues to prioritize my feelings. The relatives also talk about how haggard Susan looks now. and the general consensus is that it's their own fault. In a situation where my husband and relatives are on my side, there's not much Susan and Mike can do. So, once our second child is born, I plan to show them the baby. However, I have no intention of repairing the relationship with Susan and Mike. I'm resolved to spend an ordinary life with our family of 4, combining our strengths.
I was wondering if I could work here for a little while. I don't mind if my wages are just bread crusts. Without thinking, I blurted out. It's not every day a customer talks to me out of the blue, especially on their first visit. But asking to work for bread crusts, that's a first. The old woman looked very frail. Even through her worn, dirty clothes, it was clear she was skin and bones. Bread crusts? Really? I'm sorry, but I looked straight into her eyes, which held a very serious expression, and began explaining the situation. I told her about the current financial state of the shop, and how there was a looming plan to build a high-rise apartment nearby, which might force us to close the shop entirely. She looked a little sad, but soon she smiled kindly. It's important that small shops like this stay open. I hope you can keep it going as long as possible. She gave me those encouraging words, then bowed deeply, clutching the croissant she had just bought. It was only then that I noticed the strange aura about the old woman. Her eyes held something deeper, some unspoken emotion that seemed to linger. Well, the shop's closing soon, but if you'd like, would you like to come in for a cup of coffee? She looked surprised for a moment, but then her warm smile returned as she nodded. I flipped the sign on the door to closed and led her to the back room. I made some coffee and reheated the croissant she had bought earlier. The aroma of freshly baked bread filled the room, and she closed her eyes for a second, inhaling deeply. Such a lovely smell. It warms the heart, she said with a smile. My name is Rosie. Rosie took a slow, deliberate bite of the croissant. She wasn't eating because she was hungry. It was as if she was savoring every bite, studying the taste carefully. It made me feel a bit awkward, so I looked away. Even after finishing the last bite, she didn't comment on the croissant. She took a sip of coffee, letting out a quiet sigh. I couldn't stop thinking about what she had said earlier. So what did you mean when you said you didn't mind getting paid with bread crusts? Rosie looked down, her expression thoughtful, and after a pause, she began to speak slowly. My name is Tiana. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and steadied my breath, which had gotten a bit uneven. The bakery stood quietly on the outskirts of a residential area, tucked away from the main streets. The old sign above the door, with faded letters that read Le Plantain, hinted at how long the shop had been there. The wooden door and window frames were weathered, with patches peeling away from years of exposure to the elements. In the back of the shop, I was covered in flour, kneading the dough and spreading it out with my hands. At first, the dough felt tough, sticking to my palms, but as I worked it, I could feel it softening with the warmth of my hands. The faint smell of yeast mixed with the sweet aroma of freshly baked bread filled the dimly lit shop. When I closed my eyes, memories from my childhood would surface. When was it again? The memory of making bread with my mom, Cyndy, who's no longer with me. Tiana, making bread is all about love. Her gentle voice echoed in my mind, like an old black and white movie. She would hold my tiny hands and guide me through the process of kneading the dough. She taught me how to gently press the dough, folding it over and over to let the air in. Like this. See, you need to let the air in. That's how you get soft, fluffy bread. Why does bread need love? At that time, I tilted my head in confusion. Cyndy, with a smile yet serious expression, said to me, love-filled bread can make people happy. Don't you notice how everyone who buys our bread looks so cheerful when they leave? Looking back now, I feel a little envious of her words from that day. The memories glow faintly, continuing to live in my heart. My dad, Arnold, and Mom had been battling illness for several years. It's been 2 years since they both passed away, almost at the same time. There was no way I could let go of the bakery they built. I chose to carry on my parents' legacy and keep the shop running. Originally, I worked an office job in a small town, but I quit to move back home and take care of my parents. Arnold hated hospitals, and his condition worsened so quickly that he passed away soon after. After his death, Mom became so worn down that watching her was painful for me. Before she passed, she would often reminisce, saying, "Those were the happy days back then." She cried many times while remembering the past. It was hard for me to see her, who I always thought was strong and kind, breaking down in front of me, but I forced myself to keep smiling around her. Those were the happy days. I wondered which time in her life she was seeing in those distant eyes of hers. "This is delicious. The bread you made is so good, Tiana." As a child, I would wake up early on weekends to knead bread with her, just to see the joy on Mom's face. That routine of waking up early continued throughout elementary, middle, and high school. I didn't mind helping out at the shop, because it was my way of spending time with my parents, who were always working. But now, being alone, the morning preparations are exhausting for me. I ask myself why I decided to reopen the bakery in the first place. When my parents first fell ill, the shop closed for a time. A few years after they passed away, I did a simple renovation and reopened the bakery. The longtime regular customers were thrilled, but the bread I bake is just the same old-fashioned kind my parents taught me to make. Though I graduated from culinary school and have a license, I knew how hard running a business was, so I chose to work at a regular company, leaving a gap in my bakery experience. Recently, more stylish bakeries have been opening near the station. I've visited them several times to check out the competition, and they're trendy, with bright, modern interiors designed for younger customers. The bread is trendy too, crafted to be Instagram-worthy. In terms of appeal, I couldn't compete. On top of competing for customers, rising ingredient costs were making it hard to keep the bakery afloat. I have to work harder, and even harder. I muttered to myself, kneading the dough. I noticed the unnecessary tension in my hands and bit my lip. With my parents' teachings in mind, I was determined to bake bread with love every day. But love alone wasn't enough. I didn't have any formal training in bread making, so my knowledge was quite limited. In fact, even though the dough is supposed to be kneaded by a mixer, I still struggled with using it and had to knead everything by hand. Every morning, I would check the dough I had prepared the day before, shape it, and bake it. Compared to the days when my parents worked together, my skills were far less refined, and our productivity had dropped significantly. I would use the leftover bread from the previous day to make things like rusks, but even I felt embarrassed by how inefficient I was. Around 8 a.m., as the bread came out of the oven, I started arranging it on display. Even the way I displayed the bread didn't seem to have any sense of style. I couldn't help but feel that my shop looked plain compared to others in the area. Every day, I wrestled with how to set up the display. Then the doorbell chimed. "The sign doesn't even say we're open yet," I thought, as I turned around. It was Nicola, my childhood friend. She was a little taller than me, looking down at me with that cold gaze of hers. Nicola, the daughter of the local landowner, had always been someone everyone respected or feared, ever since our school days. When we were younger, She used to come to the store with her kind dad, always holding his hand, buying bread together. But now, Nicola, who I hadn't seen in a long time, glanced at the bread in the shop while crossing her arms and smiling at me. I paused my display work, feeling frozen in place. She had always been so unpredictable, and honestly, I was never comfortable around her. She wore a sleek, expensive suit that didn't quite fit the humble atmosphere of my shop, with a famous designer handbag slung over her shoulder. "Long time no see, Tiana," she said with a cold smile. There was something unsettling behind that smile, as if she had some hidden agenda. I tried to stay cautious, wondering what she could want. But before I could say anything, Nicola spoke up. "Actually, my dad is planning to turn this whole area into luxury condos. Of course, your shop is included in the plan." Luxury condos? In this residential neighborhood? Yes, the houses around here are old, and the residents are elderly. Many of them are looking to sell their land, so we thought it would be better to tear everything down and redevelop the area. As she spoke, Nicola picked up one of the wrapped sandwiches nearby. She examined it for a moment, then put it back, as if deep in thought. "Tiana, to be honest, I don't think your store can survive much longer. Not with prices and quality like this." Her words were filled with blatant disdain. "Why would you say something like that?" "Because, who really cares about your bread? My dad's condo project is far more exciting. It's going to attract all the wealthy people to this area." Nicola laughed, a sound that sent a shiver through me. I wanted to respond, but why? Why did the bread I put so much love into suddenly feel so worthless? As I stood there, quietly stewing in my frustration, Nicola slowly walked closer, clearly enjoying the effect her words were having on me. She cast a cold glance at the unarranged bread I had on the counter, then laughed under her breath. "Who would want to eat bread kneaded by such dirty hands? Maybe only poor people buy from you." I bit my lip and stayed silent, my rough hands trembling slightly. Seeing this, she continued speaking, her tone almost playful. "But don't worry. If my dad develops this area, your store might survive as part of one of the high-rise apartments. I shouldn't argue now. If I say anything, she will just enjoy mocking me even more." Nicola pulled a thin envelope of documents out of her bag and threw it at me. The papers hit my back and fell to the floor. Nicola placed one foot on the documents, bending her knee as she lowered herself. "These are the papers to sell the land, so sign them quickly. Otherwise, your store will end up looking like an abandoned island with nothing around it." She blew a breath at my bangs, gave a small laugh, then stood up and walked out of the store. I watched her leave and let out a deep sigh. With frustration and anger bubbling up from the depths of my soul, I continued preparing to open the shop. I'm going to protect this store, no matter what. I clenched my fists tightly, making sure no one could see. But from that point on, sales at the store slowly started to decline. I didn't hear it directly, but it seemed like someone was spreading bad rumors about us. A small bakery has its own charm because it's small. At our store, we pride ourselves on using local ingredients and hand-kneading everything. However, someone spread a rumor that we were using foreign flour and that the bread was factory-made, not handmade. It wasn't true, but the number of customers kept dwindling while the leftover bread on the shelves piled up more and more. As the sun began to set, silence fell outside the shop. No matter how few customers came, I decided to keep making bread with all my heart. Surely, someday, people would understand. Someday. But when? I muttered to myself, staring at the unsold savory bread. trying desperately to hold back the tears rising up. Just then, the bell on the door softly rang. An elderly woman entered the store, silhouetted by the setting sun. Her body was frail, even through her clothes. I could tell she had lost weight. Her sunken eyes looked lifeless, as if she might collapse at any moment. She was holding a large suitcase, the kind you'd take on an overseas trip. Out of curiosity, I glanced at the handle, where a keychain, the type you'd find at a souvenir shop, hung with the name Rosie written on it. That must be her name, I thought, a small smile tugging at my lips, which I quickly hid. Welcome. Please take your time browsing. Rosie nodded slightly at me, her eyes studying my face for a moment. Then, she looked down, as if deep in thought, before slowly glancing around the shop. Eventually, her gaze settled on the croissants, her eyes narrowing slightly. Could I have one of these? Her voice was weak. I nodded, picked up a croissant, and headed to the register. After completing the transaction, Rosie turned back to me, looking a little nervous. The store's name is Printemps, right? Huh? Oh, yes. My parents named it. I'm not quite sure what it means. I tried to laugh it off, but Rosie gave a small, complex smile. She stared lovingly at the croissant wrapped in the plastic bag, and I found myself watching her with a strange sense of curiosity. Was the croissant something special to her? Finally, Rosie seemed to gather her courage and spoke. Actually, I was wondering if I could work here for a bit. You can pay me in bread crusts. Without thinking, what? I blurted out. It's rare for a customer, especially one I've just met today, to approach me like this, but it's even rarer for them to ask to work here. For bread crusts, no less. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it all, but Rosie's face was dead serious. There was no trace of a joke in her eyes, so I decided to take her seriously. I took off my work hat and faced her with sincerity. I'm sorry, but I looked straight into Rosie's eyes, which were filled with determination, and began to explain the situation. I explained the state of the business, how the foot traffic had slowed down, and how a high-rise development might eventually force us to close the bakery for good. As I spoke, I found myself wondering why I was telling all this to a stranger I had just met. But there was something about Rosie's earnest demeanor that made me want to open up to her. The number of customers has dropped so much that right now, I'm managing the shop by myself. Rosie's expression softened, though there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. It's so important for small shops like this to stay open. I really hope you can keep going. She offered me words of encouragement, a croissant in her hand, before bowing slightly in gratitude. Watching her bow, my chest tightened, even amid the negative rumors. It felt so meaningful that there were still people who appreciated the bread I put so much love into making. Her words were a comfort, and for a moment, the weight of my worries lifted just a little. Thank you. I'll do my best to keep this place going, I responded with a determined smile. Rosie nodded, her expression turning slightly wistful as she gazed at me. It was then that I finally noticed the deep emotions hidden in her eyes. There was something more behind her words, something heavy and unresolved. Despite my inner hesitation, I couldn't help but ask, "The shop is about to close for the day, but if you'd like, how about a cup of coffee inside?" Rosie looked a bit surprised at my offer, but then her warm smile returned, and she nodded. "I'd love that." I flipped the open sign on the door to closed and led Rosie to the back room. The old furniture was worn and dusty, but each piece carried memories of my childhood and my parents, so I'd never considered replacing them. I brewed a pot of coffee and reheated the croissant she had bought. The rich smell of the freshly baked pastry filled the room, And Rosie smiled contentedly at the aroma. It smells wonderful. Just the scent warms my heart. She smiled as she spoke. Rosie. She introduced herself as she took a small bite of the croissant. Savoring it, she wasn't eating because she was hungry, but rather as if she were carefully studying the flavor. Her serious expression made me a little uncomfortable, so I looked away. Even after finishing the last bite, Rosie didn't say anything about the croissant. She took a sip of her coffee and let out a soft sigh. Her earlier words echoed in my mind, and I couldn't help but wonder. So when you said you'd work for just bread crusts, what did you mean by that? Rosie lowered her eyes as if in deep thought, then slowly began to speak. When I was younger, I lived in Paris. But 8 years ago, I returned home to care for my parents, who had no other relatives. I wanted to keep pursuing my passion, but in the end, I couldn't leave them in their final days. Her quiet words were heavy with the weight of years of sacrifice. As she spoke, I tried to imagine the struggles she had faced. But, my parent passed away last year. It's surprisingly lonely. That's why I'm so exhausted like this. Seeing Rosie laugh like that made my heart take unexpectedly. I had just finished caring for my own parents, and I could understand a little of what she was going through. As I listened to her story, I found myself talking about my own parents and how the bakery was struggling lately. I've been having a really hard time too. Lately, customers have been dropping off, and it's been so difficult. I said this, thinking we could share each other's struggles. We've both been through a lot, haven't we? I thought we might share a wry smile, but instead, Rosie's gaze fixed on a photo in the corner of the room, and her pupils slightly widened. The photo showed my parents, both smiling. It was a picture I took when I was young, back when the two of them ran the bakery together. As I continued speaking, Rosie's expression changed. The warmth in her face faded, and she furrowed her brow, showing a deep sadness, an expression that was hard to describe. Rosie remained silent for a moment before speaking softly. "Thank you so much for keeping this bakery going." She directed words of gratitude toward me. It was a completely unexpected statement, completely out of the blue, not fitting into the flow of the conversation at all. I felt confused, wondering why she was thanking me. But Rosie, with a deep sincerity in her eyes, thanked me again from the bottom of her heart. "Thank you. You've worked so hard," she whispered. In that moment, it felt as though the tight string that had been holding me together snapped, and tears began to flow uncontrollably. The tears wouldn't stop. I didn't know why, but it wasn't sadness, it was happiness. I had been holding myself together, alone, for so long. There had been no one to rely on. I hadn't even had time to grieve the loss of those most dear to me, just fighting to survive. For the first time, it felt like someone, even if it was Rosie, whom I just met, truly understood the softer parts of me that I kept hidden. Thank you," I said, tears still streaming down my face, beginning to feel flustered. I realized just how much loneliness I had been carrying. Rosie's words brought something important back to the surface for me. After that, I opened up about how tough things had been with the bakery. Rosie quietly listened, trying to understand my pain. Once I finished speaking, Rosie fell silent, seeming to think deeply. When I looked at the clock, I realized how much time had passed. "Maybe this is fate," I said, and asked if she would stay the night. Rosie said, "I'd be honored to," and she nodded deeply. That night, we had a little drink and went to bed. I was a bit excited, maybe because it felt so good to finally open up and share my feelings with someone. As I lay in bed, I started remembering the old days. There was always the smell of bread. When I would get up and head to the workshop, there would be Mom and Dad, kneading dough. "Good morning," Mom would say with a smile, though her face was blurry, perhaps because it was such a distant memory. I remember a ladybug on her white apron. In the black and white memory, the red and black spots stood out strangely vividly. I tried to gently catch the bug with my fingers, thinking it wasn't good to have insects in a place where food was made. But she softly grabbed my hand and smiled. "Let's go outside together." She led me outside. She lightly brushed her apron, and the ladybug opened its small wings and flew away. Its flight was clumsy. She gazed peacefully at the path of the ladybug. She seemed to have fallen asleep without realizing it, as memories from the past flooded her mind. When she woke up, something was noticeably different about the house. The smell of bread. She got up from the bed and ran her hand over her head several times. Even though it was still before prep time, the delightful aroma of freshly baked bread wafted through the room. Was she still dreaming? No, that wasn't it. Rubbing her eyes instinctively, she hurried to the workshop, eager to find the source of the smell. As she opened the door, an impressive array of bread lined the workbench. Croissants, baguettes, and colorful pastries were beautifully baked, filling the room with a warm, inviting atmosphere, almost like the arrival of spring. Overwhelmed with surprise and admiration, her words caught in her throat as Rosie bowed her head apologetically. "I'm sorry for using the dough and ingredients without asking. This is amazing. Did you do all of this by yourself, Rosie?" She couldn't help but pick up a croissant in front of her. The dough had been prepped the day before, but the shaping must have been done since early morning. Even now, Rosie's hands continued to work without missing a beat, skillfully forming the bread with efficient and swift movements. Rosie smiled as she worked the dough. The frail impression I had of her from the previous day vanished, replaced by youthful energy as Rosie seamlessly transitioned to the baking process. "Actually, I used to be a baker in Paris." "What? Paris? That Paris?" Startled and slightly flustered, something clicked in her mind the moment she heard those words. She remembered that her parents, when they were young, had gone to Paris to train as bakers. Mom rarely met other bakers besides her parents, so the mention of Paris made her wonder. Of course, seeking out the authentic taste of bread must have drawn them there. It made perfect sense. Those who pursue the art of bread making inevitably find their way to Paris. Her parents had met during their training in Paris and later married. I didn't know much about Paris, its location in France, or how long it would take to get there from the U.S. by plane. All she had was this vague image of Paris being glamorous and having a compact city center. So she simply said with a smile, "Maybe you met my parents there." Rosie laughed cheerfully, seeing her smile. "Maybe I did," he replies. A new sense of hope began to grow within me. Even though Rosie was older, it would be a shame for such skill to go unused. She felt a strong urge to work alongside Rosie, to try her best with her. "I can't exactly pay you in bread crusts, but how about living in with us for $100? Rosie grasped her hand firmly. There was a chance that no one would come to the shop. Now that tall condos dominated the area, I might not be able to continue running the bakery my parents had cherished so much. But at least, she thought, she could make the end as joyful as possible. If even a few more people came to the shop and left with a smile, enjoying the delicious bread, that would be enough. Afterward, she taught Rosie how to use the shop's machines. As expected of a former professional baker, Rosie learned quickly. In fact, I had the sense that Rosie was even more skilled with the machines than she was. When she pointed this out, Rosie smiled. Most of these machines were made back in the day, so I'm familiar with them, and said. A peaceful week had passed. That day, as I casually checked the bakery's website, I couldn't believe my eyes. To my astonishment, there were 59 interview requests flooding in. The simple website I had made myself had a direct messaging feature, and now there were a ton of emails piling up. The site had barely seen any traffic, but suddenly, starting last week, the number of views skyrocketed to unbelievable numbers. I was overwhelmed and confused, wondering what on earth was going on, and soon found myself swamped with calls and emails regarding the interview requests. Rosie, there's a lot of interviews and things to deal with. It's really overwhelming. I struggled to wrap my head around the situation, feeling a wave of confusion wash over me. Rosie, while cleaning up after the shop had closed for the day, spoke up apologetically. Actually, I told an old contact in the media about your bakery. My bakery. They must have thought a bakery I recommend is worth covering, and I kind of let it slip that I'm working here. Word spread in the industry that my bread's making a comeback, and now, well, all these requests came flooding in. I tilted my head, completely baffled. An interview because of Rosie's recommendation. Rosie's bread making a comeback. As I continued listening to her, I learned that Rosie had even participated in an international bread competition. There's a major world competition in France, where bakers showcase their skills, and she was a renowned figure in that circle. I gazed at her with a newfound sense of awe and respect. But then, a question popped into my mind. But why would someone as accomplished as you choose to work at my little shop? Because I could sense your passion for bread. I wanted to rediscover the joy of baking again myself. Rosie smiled warmly as she locked eyes with me. Then, no, I don't think I should keep it a secret any longer. As if deciding there was no point in hiding anything, she murmured, "It's true I returned because I had to care for my parents, but coming to this shop wasn't a coincidence." "What? Are you talking about that day you came to buy a croissant for the first time?" "A few months ago, while going through my parents' belongings, I found a letter from your parents. In that letter, they wrote about how happy they were. Your parents were young, and you were still a little girl, but the three of you looked so joyful in the photos they sent." Her words sent a ripple of surprise and unease through my heart. Rosie reached into a large suitcase she had left sitting nearby and handed me a letter. It was old and faded, but on the back, there was a family photo, taken in front of a bright and new bakery sign that read Printemps. In the photo were my beautiful mother Cyndy and my strong father Arnold. And there I was, flashing a bright smile straight into the camera. It was from back when my mom was still alive, the good old days, when everything was perfect. Good old days she had always spoken of, and the sight of it made my chest tighten. As I continued staring at the photo, Rosie said, "Before I walked into the shop, I had no idea your parents had passed away. It broke my heart. I was so sad. But then I knew, Tiana, I knew I wanted to help you." Rosie told me this, her voice gentle yet sincere. My parents had trained under Rosie at her bakery in Paris. They were young and full of passion, and they had worked hard, contributing greatly to Rosie's business. They had talked about returning home and opening a bakery of their own, but the distance had kept Rosie from seeing them for years. Guided by the address on the letter, Rosie had visited my shop. The products lined up in the store were completely different from the bread Rosie had taught them to make. Of course, they were different. It wasn't my parents who made this place. It was me. But Rosie stared at the few remaining pieces of bread, then pointed to a croissant. "That croissant is still the same. The shape is exactly like the one I taught them." When she was in Paris, Rosie had acted like a surrogate parent to my own. She adored them both, and that's why she's so determined to help you. Rosie's words warmed my heart, filling me with a sense of gratitude. I finally understood why this shop was named Printemps. The name, meaning spring in French, might have been a tribute to Rosie, an expression of my parents' respect and appreciation for her. It filled me with happiness knowing that someone my parents loved so much was now here to support me. After that, the success of the interview was beyond what I had imagined. Due to her age, Rosie let me handle most of the interviews. I would explain the store's concept, introduce our best-selling items, and speak about the most important thing, love. I put my heart into every piece of bread I make. I want everyone who eats it to feel happiness. Once the interviews were broadcasted on television and featured in magazines, the store became so popular that lines stretched out the door. The shop was always full of life, and every day, surrounded by smiling customers. I worked side by side with Rosie making bread. Watching the long lines, I couldn't help but turn to Rosie and say, "We're busy every day, and sales are incredible. Our profits are soaring, and it's all thanks to you, Rosie." Rosie smiled kindly. "Don't misunderstand. It's because of your passion, combined with my experience, that we got here. Neither of us could have made it this far alone." The shop stayed busy from morning to evening. We were so swamped that we hardly had time to take breaks. But seeing our bread selling out one after another, I never felt tired. I was having too much fun. By evening, nearly everything had sold out, and the shop began to calm down. The crowd outside started to thin when Nicola walked in with her father, Huey, by her side. Nicola's eyes widened in surprise as she took in the shop's busy atmosphere. Almost all the bread was gone, and the only line left was for tomorrow's pre-orders. So many customers. Nicola, seemingly in shock, whispered as she stared at the scene, her mouth hanging open. "Welcome, I'm so sorry, but we've nearly sold out." Before Nicola, who was still standing there in disbelief, Huey stepped forward, holding a stack of documents. He turned to me with a serious expression. With a heavy voice, "About that matter we discussed," he said. A wave of anxiety spread through me, and I instinctively glanced at Rosie standing beside me. Were they about to take the land away? Just then, Huey pushed Nicola's head down as if forcing her to apologize, and he started apologizing to me himself. What on earth was happening? I thought, feeling a bit perplexed. Huey then began explaining everything. Apparently, the high-rise apartment project she had been talking about was a lie. It seems she had concocted the story as part of a scheme to harass me and force me to sell the shop. Huey apologized over and over again, but Nicola refused to meet my eyes. I had gone past anger and was just left feeling exasperated. Eventually, even Huey noticed my demeanor and urged me to apologize. Nicola, lifting her head, had a twisted expression on her face. Was it embarrassment? She looked away. Back then, this place was on the brink of going under. So how could you? She would probably never understand. She would never understand the way I wanted to protect this store, the one someone precious left for me. Maybe at that moment, I looked at her with pity in my eyes. When our eyes met, her face contorted even more. What? This popularity is only temporary. People will get bored, and things will go back to how they were before. She screamed, her voice filled with frustration. At that moment, Huey's expression shifted to one of sternness. "Nicola, that's enough. Do you even realize how disrespectful you're being to her?" he scolded. Nicola, looking up at Huey in shock, Tears began to fill her eyes. Dad, He was so angry, it seemed like he was about to raise his hand to her in fury. But before anything could escalate, Rosie stepped forward, rubbing her aching back as she moved between them, and gave Nicole a gentle smile. Is hurting others for your own desires really what makes you happy? What are you talking about? Of course not. It's just that do you even understand how much effort Tiana has put into keeping this place going? Do you know how many people she's made happy with her work? Have you ever done that for anyone else? She stood there silently for a while, but soon her face hardened, her expression filled with pain as tears rolled down her cheeks. I just couldn't stand seeing Tiana succeed. I never got any recognition. I was always in the shadows. People only saw me as some spoiled rich girl. That's your problem, not hers. If you think stepping on someone else's hard work is going to solve anything, you're dead wrong. Rosie remained unfazed by her tears and fired back. At that moment, Aita turned back to me and, lowering his head slightly, said, "It's my fault for spoiling her. I should have made her struggle sooner. Nicola, I'm cutting ties with you. Leave the house immediately." Nicola, startled by his harsh words, burst into even more tears. She collapsed to her knees. No, I won't leave. I don't want to." But Huey, grabbing her arm, dragged her out of the shop as she screamed and fought back. As I watched her being forcibly taken away, I couldn't help but feel relieved. Rosie gently stroked my head. Since I'm a little taller than her, she had to stretch up, straining a bit, but she did her best, reaching up to pat my head with all her strength. "You're amazing, truly amazing. You've worked so hard. Really, you've done such a great job, even with other customers in the shop." Rosie's voice trembled as she said this to me, her eyes filled with tears. I felt embarrassed, and all I could do was look down in silence. A few months passed after that. The bakery, Printemps, had firmly established its place in the community. The bread Rosie and I made was always filled with love, and that warmth seemed to capture people's hearts, making them come back again and again. We even started getting coverage from the media, and customers from out of state began to visit. In the midst of these busy days, working with Rosie to bake every day filled me with a deep sense of satisfaction. And then one day, Huey, now a regular at the bakery, came in once again. He looked a little older than I remembered. As usual, he used the tongs to place a few pastries on his tray, then walked to the register and gave me a small smile. While I was calculating the total, "Tiana, I came here today to say thank you," he said. "I heard Nicola is having a hard time in a new city. I've realized it was my failure as a parent, and I regret it. But through your bakery, I believe she learned some important lessons." I put the bread in a bag and responded vaguely. I couldn't help but think that he truly loved her with all his heart, despite worrying about his daughter, struggling far away from home. Deep down, he sincerely wished for her to become a strong and independent adult. I had no idea how she was doing these days, but I had this feeling that someday, after going through various hardships, Nicola and I would finally understand each other. After all, even though we were now on such bad terms, we used to be childhood friends who played together. Nicola has always been a proud girl, so I'm sure she'll come back having achieved something great, even though my words had no real basis. He nodded deeply. "Thank you. No matter what path she chooses, I want to support her," he said. His expression was that of a parent full of love for their child. I realized I no longer had anyone who treated me with such kindness or strictness. As always, the small shop was full of people smiling as they chose their bread. At that moment, A memory came to me when I was a child, standing near my mom's feet at the register, watching the customers. That's right. Back when my parents had just started the bakery, it was always this busy, too. I was too young to help, so I would just hide in the corner of the register and watch the shop. Occasionally, the smell of freshly baked bread would fill the shop, and my dad, dressed in his white apron, would rush out with a tray of hot bread. The memories always came to me in black and white, blending with the present in my mind. Tiana, when the register's clear, you need to start preparing the next batch. There's no time to just stand around. Rosie lightly tapped my back with her small hand, and then started arranging the freshly baked bread. With a voice that didn't match her elderly appearance, she called out loudly, "Fresh croissants are ready." And soon enough, she was surrounded by customers eager for the hot croissants. I felt tears welling up. Rosie looked so much like Mom, or maybe Dad. I was so happy, and yet so sad. But as I ran up the next customer, those feelings slowly faded away. The croissants I made, using the techniques Rosie taught me from my parents, remained the bakery's top seller. Each day, the shop was filled with smiles and the smell of warm, freshly baked bread. And despite the busyness, there was always a sense of fulfillment. Living with Rosie has been a truly irreplaceable time for me. "Rosie, looks like the bread's going to turn out just right today," I said with a smile, and Rosie smiled back in response to my words. "Yes, it's important to bake with love. I always put my heart into it. This is something my parents taught me. When you make bread, you must do it with love. And no matter how hard life gets, as long as you don't give up, happiness will surely come." This lesson was passed from Rosie to my parents, and now it's been passed on to me. "Tiana, your waist," Rosie said, directing my attention to my waist. A small ladybug had attached itself to my clothes, and as I noticed it, it spread its wings and flew away. When I was in Paris, I heard a story like this. Ladybugs are a symbol of happiness. If one lands on you, it takes away all your worries or illness when it flies away. So, Tiana, did your worries fly away with it? I looked at Rosie and placed my hand on my chest, smiling. The fear of running the bakery alone after losing my parents, that overwhelming anxiety had disappeared from inside me before I even realized it. But the one who truly took away my worries wasn't that ladybug. It's the person who, I'm sure, will continue to smile beside me from now on.
My name is Layla, and I'm 37 years old, working as a homemaker. I've been married to my husband Jimmy for 13 years now. Currently, we are living together as a family of 4 with our daughter Karen and my mother-in-law. A few years ago, after my father-in-law passed away, we started living with my mother-in-law at her place. Living with mother-in-law in her home was anything but peaceful. Suddenly, after we moved in, she began to harass me. "Is dinner ready?" "Oh, yes. It will be done shortly." "How long are you planning to make everyone wait?" While I was cooking, mother-in-law came into the kitchen and started tasting the food. "Layla, this pot roast has no flavor. It's awful." "Oh, really? I thought I had seasoned it well. How could you taste it and still have it turn out like this? You are really bad at cooking." Jimmy and Karen must feel so pitiful with this food. "I'm sorry." Jimmy must be having a hard time with such a useless wife. "Hurry up and set the table." She complained constantly but never helped with preparing dinner. Mother-in-law didn't just push cooking onto me, she left all household chores to me and just lazed around the house during the day. "Dinner's ready, everyone." As the whole family sat down and started eating, Jimmy and Karen praised the pot roast that mother-in-law had earlier criticized, saying,
"This pot roast is delicious." "Yeah, Mom, it's tasty."
Then mother-in-law said, "Yes, indeed. The seasoning is just right." She was now saying the exact opposite of what she had said before. Despite her harassment and nasty comments to me, she always spoke kindly to Jimmy and Karen, probably not wanting them to dislike her.
"Layla is really good at cooking."
"Oh, thank you." In front of Jimmy and Karen, she sometimes praises me.
"Today, Layla did all the housework, considering my health. She's truly a capable wife."
Is that right, Layla? In truth, mother-in-law had just forced household chores onto me. No. As I tried to deny it, mother-in-law kicked my leg under the table where no one else could see. Ah, yes. That's true.
"Thanks for always being kind to my mom."
Jimmy thanked me with a beaming smile. Even though that wasn't the truth. I could never hide my bewilderment at mother-in-law's blatant attitude. Because of this, Jimmy never noticed that I was being harassed, and he even thought that mother-in-law and I got along well. Jimmy really cared for mother-in-law, and when father-in-law passed away, he was more concerned for her than anyone else. I couldn't bring myself to say anything bad about mother-in-law to such a loving Jimmy and had never been able to talk to him about it. Karen being very fond of mother-in-law was another reason why I couldn't consult anyone. When it was decided that we'd live together with my in-laws, Karen said,
"Yay! I get to live with Grandma now,"
and was delighted. Mother-in-law adored Karen, and they always played together, took baths together, they were very close. Taking advantage of that, mother-in-law's harassment towards me escalated. When I came back from shopping, the room was all messed up.
"Hey! Mother-in-law, what happened? Why is everything so scattered?"
I asked, surprised, and mother-in-law answered with a smirk. I couldn't find something, and before I knew it, it had become a mess. The house wouldn't be turned upside down just from looking for something. Mother-in-law surely did it to harass me. Sorry. I'm going to dinner with friends now. Cleanup's on you. As expected, I ended up cleaning, and mother-in-law fled the house. That day, cleaning took all day, and I couldn't do any other chores. Then mother-in-law came back home and said, "Laundry, dishes, cleaning, none of it's done? What on earth were you doing?" Holding back my anger at mother-in-law's scheme, I quietly continued with the housework. Hurry up, or everyone will come home. If Jimmy realizes what an incapable wife you are, he'll surely divorce you. Mother-in-law never helped with the chores and constantly nagged and rushed me. I was getting more and more frantic as dinner was nowhere near ready. In the end, dinner was late. What? Dinner's not ready yet? I'm sorry. It'll be ready soon. Just wait a bit longer. Jimmy asked, looking concerned. Are you feeling ill? No, it's not that, but... I thought about explaining why dinner was late, but when I glanced at mother-in-law, she was glaring as if to say, "Don't you dare. Today has been a bit hectic." Oh, I see. I'm sorry. No, it's totally fine. Mother-in-law seemed to be trying to portray me as an incapable wife who's hindered by her, hoping Jimmy would get fed up and divorce me. But Jimmy is so kind that instead of blaming me, he was even worried about me. Mother-in-law didn't find this amusing, and her daily harassment towards me only escalated. Lately, it's not just about the harassment towards me, she started interfering with Karen's affairs.
"You two seem to be trying to get Karen into a private middle school."
Yes, we are. Is there a problem with that?
"It's cruel to make her study late every night for exams. Stop it right now."
Well, we're not going to stop just because you said so. Karen herself has expressed a desire to go to a private middle school. We are not forcing her to study and go against her will.
Kids should just play and have fun. There's no need to force them to study now.
But working hard now will open up more options for her future, and Karen wants this.
You're not doing it for Karen, you're forcing it on her, aren't you?
That's not true. Lately, as Karen has been studying at night and attending tutoring, our time together has decreased, and mother-in-law seemed displeased.
Just give up on the middle school exams, it's a waste of time.
I couldn't hold back my anger at this comment. I was furious at mother-in-law for disrespecting Karen's feelings and only saying selfish things.
Isn't it normal to support Karen when she wants to do this?
What?
How dare you talk back?
Mother-in-law was quite surprised as I had never talked back before.
Karen's exams have nothing to do with you, mother-in-law.
What do you mean, nothing to do?
I'm her grandmother.
Feeling like arguing would get us nowhere, I left saying,
Enough of this. I'm going to pick up Karen.
Mother-in-law continued to harass me in front of Jimmy and Karen, seemingly unable to let go of me talking back.
Today's dinner looks plain? Is this all we have?
I guess she must have been furious with me.
You can't even think about feeding a growing child?
I'm sorry. Finally, Jimmy couldn't just listen in silence and snapped at mother-in-law.
Come on, Mom. Don't complain about the meal that Layla made.
His anger ignited, Jimmy had mother-in-law flustered. She quickly backpedaled. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's not what I meant to say.
Not wanting to start another fight, I brushed it off with, It's fine. After dinner, while I was washing dishes, mother-in-law came over and muttered,
Remember this,
and went back to her room. From then on, every day was filled with fear, wondering what she might do next. Then, one day. It was the day of Karen's acceptance announcement. We headed to the venue, all nerves. When we checked the bulletin board, Karen's number was clearly written there.
You did it, Karen. Awesome. You got accepted.
Yay. We were all overjoyed. Karen had been studying without a break for months. Thanks to her efforts, she had passed the middle school exams.
We have to celebrate today. Yes. Karen, what would you like to eat?
Steak. Steak was Karen's absolute favorite. Should we order delivery today?
Hooray!
On my way home, I called the steakhouse and ordered a luxury steak for delivery. We also decided to buy a cake, so I made a small detour on my way home, asking my mother-in-law to receive the steak delivery at the house. When I called mother-in-law, she said, Understood. I'll take care of it. Because of various detours, we were completely past lunchtime by the time we got home.
I'm starving. I want to eat the steak now.
You're right, we're late. The steak should be here, so let's eat plenty.
Okay.
When we arrived home, we just ran into mother-in-law's friends as they were leaving. They all said in unison, Thanks for the feast, and left, making me wonder what was going on. I had a bad feeling and rushed into the house. The delivered steak was all messed up on the table.
Mother-in-law, did you eat this steak? Oh, if it's the delivery steak, I enjoyed it with my friends at a luncheon.
You'll pay for it later.
What are you doing?
When I yelled at mother-in-law, she replied, You were probably planning to order delivery and slack off from housework.
I won't allow that. This was to celebrate Karen's success. Success celebration?
What success? I had told mother-in-law in advance that today was Karen's exam acceptance announcement. She seemed to have forgotten because she hadn't listened to me. Karen and Jimmy arrived late. Karen had heard our conversation in the corridor and was crying. Grandma's so mean. Karen had been excited to report to Grandma quickly, but to think that she didn't even remember the acceptance announcement day. I thought it was understandable for Karen to cry.
Mom, today was Karen's middle school acceptance announcement. How could you forget such an important day? That's awful.
Mother-in-law seemed unable to hide her agitation.
What, today? Layla, why didn't you tell me earlier?
I did tell you. I was too stunned to even feel angry.
Karen worked hard and got accepted, so we were going to celebrate by eating her favorite steak. To think you'd eat it with your friends. I can't believe it. No, it wasn't like that. I really didn't know.
You didn't know?
I called you about the delivery, didn't I?
That's...
Mom, did you eat it on purpose?
On purpose, you say. Mother-in-law's face turned paler and paler, and she began to sweat. She was desperately trying to think of an excuse, but seemed to have no words to say.
I've suspected this for a while, but you really are harassing Layla, aren't you?
It seems Jimmy had a vague idea of what was going on. But since I didn't talk to him about it, he just watched the situation. Suddenly, mother-in-law approached Karen and said,
I'm sorry. Let's all go to the steakhouse. I'll pay.
Karen responded.
I hate Grandma.
She pushed mother-in-law away and ran to her room. The shock of being hated by her beloved granddaughter seemed to be tremendous, and mother-in-law froze after falling on her bottom. After that, I told Jimmy everything about how mother-in-law had been harassing me.
Why didn't you tell me sooner?
I couldn't say anything when I thought about you and Karen. I'm sorry for forcing you all this time. You don't have to endure it anymore. Jimmy suggested that we move to make sure I wouldn't be harassed anymore. Since Karen also said she didn't want to live with mother-in-law anymore, we were able to leave the house without worry. Thank you. On moving day, while I was packing, mother-in-law came into the room. Are you really leaving the house? Mother-in-law's face looked like she was about to cry. Yes.
You must be glad to be away from me, whom you hate.
I don't exactly hate you.
Can you please leave? You're in the way of my packing.
As I tried to drive mother-in-law out of the room, she suddenly began to plead. Please don't leave. I'll apologize for everything. Please.
I can't bear to be apart from Karen. Karen also says she doesn't want to live with you.
No matter how much I explained, mother-in-law wouldn't let go, clinging and crying. So I made a proposal.
Actually, we're moving to my parents' house. If you really can't bear to be apart from Karen, will you come with us?
My father is very stern, with a scary face. I knew mother-in-law knew that, so I said it a bit maliciously, thinking she would never agree, but surprisingly. I understand. That's fine with me. I was stunned that she agreed. It seems mother-in-law wanted to be with Karen that badly. Since she wouldn't harass me in front of my parents, and if she did, I could report it to my father, I agreed to live together. Jimmy said,
Sorry, if something happens with my mom coming along, feel free to kick her out.
So we all moved to my parents' house, and the cohabitation began. My father seemed dissatisfied with mother-in-law came with us. Of course, he knew how mother-in-law had harassed me and ruined Karen's celebration. He didn't blame her directly, but his silent pressure kept mother-in-law shrinking. She spoke less, seemed downcast. Whenever my mother and I asked for help with housework, she readily complied and worked hard. I couldn't help but laugh at her changed appearance. Life went on without any incidents for a while, but finally, mother-in-law reached her limit and yelled,
I'm sick of this house.
My father is intimidating, and Karen still can't get through to him. I think Jimmy's attitude toward mother-in-law has become colder because he couldn't endure various things anymore.
Karen, let's go home together.
Mother-in-law tried to forcibly pull a resistant Karen and leave the house.
Mother-in-law, stop it. Can't you see Karen doesn't want to go? It's better to be with me than in this house.
At that moment, my father arrived.
What are you doing? Knock it off.
Frightened by my father's forceful yell, mother-in-law froze in fear.
I allowed you to live with us because you said you didn't want to be apart from your granddaughter. But if you try to take Karen against her will, I'll call the police for kidnapping. I didn't mean to that way.
Hearing my father's shout, Jimmy also rushed over.
Mom, what are you doing? Just leave us. We can't be bothered by you anymore. I'm cutting ties completely. No way.
Then Karen shook off mother-in-law's hand and screamed.
Get out!
Even mother-in-law seemed shocked by this, dropping her shoulders and leaving the house in tears. Now she's back at her house, living a lonely life. Afterwards, mother-in-law became reclusive, and it seems that even neighbors and friends have started keeping their distance. On the other hand, our family is living peacefully every day. Karen is studying hard at a private school every day, and Jimmy has become very friendly with my parents, especially my father, with whom he drinks every day. I wish I had talked to Jimmy earlier and moved to my parents' house.